The opposition Progressive Liberal Party's parliamentary team plans to file a vote of no confidence against the Speaker of the House of Assembly. Good morning and welcome to Today in Parliament on this Valentine's Day. I'm Altaviz Mannings. The opposition's motion of no confidence in the Speaker led to an adjournment of the House of Assembly on Monday. It is a continuation of the fallout from 2 weeks ago when the Member of Parliament for Anglerston, Glenys Hannah Martin, was suspended and the remaining 3 opposition MPs were suspended last week. Keishla Adderley reports on the brief sitting on Monday and what the opposition has communicated on the sidelines of the House sitting.
Fallout continues. The agenda of the House of Assembly is on hold again, with the Leader of the Opposition and Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador MP Philip Brave Davis, South Andros and Mangrove Key MP Picewell Forbes, and Exuma MP Chester Cooper under suspension. A motion expressing no confidence in the Speaker is pending.
Wish to bring to the attention of this Honourable House that the Leader of the official opposition has written a letter to the Clerk, the acting Clerk of the Parliament, and has indicated an intention pursuant to Rule 52 to bring a motion when the House next convenes on Wednesday.
In a statement, Mr. Davis indicated that he, by private note to the Speaker dated the 9th of February 2018, served notice of the intention by him or another member of the opposition to move a vote of no confidence in the Speaker. Mr. Davis has also asked the Speaker to clarify when the 4 suspended members of the PLP will be allowed back into the House, so as to avoid any further loss of decorum in the lower chamber. Leader of Government Business in the House, Renwood Wells, noted that resolving this matter is a priority.
Given the gravity of what the Leader of the Opposition intends to do on Wednesday, the government is obliged, along with this House, to see to it that all members are here on Wednesday and that that motion is going to take precedence over the entire House agenda as per the House rules. And so we thought it fitting that we would have this Parliament today. We'd have our meeting so that all members would have a right to be here on Wednesday, so that we can get on with the business of this House.
Anglerston MP Glenys Hannah Martin, meantime, was eligible to sit in Parliament today, but expressed in a statement her intention to show solidarity with her fellow opposition members and sit out today's session. Outside Parliament, Wells responded to a question about the perception some observers may have over the way House members are spending their time.
Obviously, the House has had to deal with the matters that arose with the suspension, the naming of the Honourable Member from Anglerston, Glenys Hannah Martin, and so that has moved the House off of its agenda, but we are fully committed come this Wednesday to getting back on the agenda of the business of the House and doing what is necessary for and on behalf of the Bahamian people.
Now, the regular agenda of the House of Assembly will begin at 10 o'clock this morning with the Speaker, Halson Moultrie, in the chair. However, once the expected resolution for a vote of no confidence is moved by the opposition Progressive Liberal Party, Deputy Speaker Don Saunders will sit in the Speaker's chair. The Deputy House Speaker sat down with me yesterday to explain the rules of this process.
I would be sitting in the chair. Well, the Speaker would take the chair at the beginning of the session, and we will go down to agenda or the order of business, and when we get to the point of resolution, the Speaker will either make a statement if he wishes, and then he will yield the chair to the Deputy Speaker. As the Speaker has already indicated to the public and to the House yesterday, the Leader of Opposition has given notice by motion that they intend to move to send to the Speaker or give make a motion for a vote of no confidence in the Speaker at tomorrow's hearing. And so up until we get to the order of business of the resolution, the Speaker will maintain the chair. Once the motion is put to the floor, most likely it will be moved by either the Leader of the Opposition or the Deputy Leader or anyone in opposition. That motion will be moved and it will have to be seconded. Once that is done, the chair will entertain any discussion on the matter. Obviously, this is not a regular occurrence in the House of Assembly in the Bahamas or anywhere else. And so the hearing will be a little different than what you would normally see. The mover will have an opportunity to speak for an hour. All other members will have up to half an hour to speak. And so we would get through that portion of the business tomorrow. It's important to say that this particular motion takes precedent over any other business of the House tomorrow. So all of the items before that would be simple orders that we would normally go through, making sure everybody's there, notices from the Senate, etc., etc. But the substantive business of the House would not be able to proceed until this particular motion is dealt with. We would do the traditional vote. But the important thing is that we're hoping that the matter is dealt with very professionally. We're hoping that the matter be dealt with very quickly, so that we can move on to doing the business of the people, which is moving some of the bills that we've already tabled. And we hope that, notwithstanding everything that's happened in the last few days, that finally we'll be able to bring resolution in this matter, and that the Bahamian people will see all of us in the House doing what we're voted there to do, which is to pass bills, make laws, and to really debate and address so many issues that we have facing our nation today. I think with respect to morale, we came in this place knowing that this is a place of advocacy, if I could use that term, of debate. Obviously, we're not happy about the fact that the business or the agenda of the House is being stalled to some extent because of this. Would we understand these things happen, as I said, very rarely, and that we're eager to get past it. We're not going to let it hold us back from our agenda. When I say that, I mean we, the governing party, we're very anxious to move on and to do the people's business. We have lots of legislation or bills that are still pending, debate in the House, and we're hoping that once this opportunity is had to members of Parliament tomorrow, that the matter will finally be resolved, and persons who wish to give comment, contribute to the debate, will obviously have that opportunity. As the chair, and as you would know, every member of the House of Assembly have the privilege of being able to speak. No one could tell them not to speak. Once this matter is resolved, would not be able to come up again unless the House is prorogued, unless there's a new session of the House. And so it'll be very, very important, given what we've been seeing over the last few days, to put this behind us. As I said, this rarely happens. It's not new to the Bahamas, actually. I mean, the Free National Movement have had, at least in modern time, at least two of its speakers have no confidence vote being put against them. And so this is nothing new. It's unfortunate we're going to this point now, but it's a part of what happens in parliaments throughout the world, not only in the Bahamas. And it's a right that the opposition or anyone has to put to the floor. Rarely do you see no confidence vote succeeding. That's because, as we know, in most jurisdictions, speakers have vast discretions. There are rules which we follow in this honorable House, and most members, if not all, tend to adhere to those rules. Simply disagreeing with the views of a speaker, you would not normally have persons making such motions in circumstances. But I think the Bahamas should not be so concerned that our democracy, that our House is in any despair. Simply to know that this is a procedure that happens in the House sometimes, and that I think I speak for all members, that we are still interested in moving the agenda of the people's business forward. So I would see this as in some way a move to really get back to the people's business, and to say, listen, everybody has their views, and we could finally put this to rest as per the rules of the House. And so there's nothing, as I said earlier, there's nothing new to what's happening, but obviously we have to follow the rules, and we have to allow those persons who think that they should make the motion, we have to allow them to do that. when I was voted in as Deputy Speaker, I came with the responsibility of having to do just this. My job is to sit in the chair when the Speaker isn't in the chair. Obviously, there are other responsibilities with respect to the Committee of the Whole, etc., etc. But this office allows for the continuity of the business of the House being carried on, even in the absence of the Speaker. So, it's going to be interesting to sit tomorrow and hear the various members give their contribution. But I trust that, given the public interest, that we would act respectfully, we would act responsibly, and that we would allow the Deputy Speaker taking the chair to be able to conduct the business of the House in a very orderly manner and in accordance with the rules of the House. We are governed by them, and we, in order to make sure that the business goes through smoothly, I just want to caution my colleagues in the House to let's try and do that tomorrow and put this chapter in this session behind us. So, I mean, historically, we've had it. There's been Deputy Speakers who had to do this very same business that I'll have to do tomorrow, and I'm going to do it the best of my ability and try to maintain the decorum that people expect from us in this honorable House.
Well, parliamentarians recently used the opportunity to support the Speaker of the House, who suspended the Member of Parliament for Engliston, Glenys Hannah Martin. We now have presentations made by the Members of Parliament for Fox Hill, South Beach, St. Anne's, and East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the wonderful people of the great constituency of Fox Hill. Mr. Speaker, soon after you took your post, as you walked up and down this chamber to your chair, someone remarked that the Speaker reminded him of somebody's doting and benevolent grandfather. Grandfathers tend to let grandchildren go where they didn't let their children go. And so those grandchildren take great liberties, Mr. Speaker. So while Seabreeze, Mr. Speaker, said you had to nip it in the bud, it's not with temerity, but, Mr. Speaker, it went on too long, in my estimation. You, in your generous heart, as a grandfather, allowed it to go on too long, and I am here to support you that you finally said enough is enough. Mr. Speaker, I am reminded of my younger days, and I am from a village, a little village, a traditional village, and by its very definition, villagers live simple lives. Good morning, good afternoon, yes sir, yes ma'am. That's the way it is. And I have a little story, Mr. Speaker. We stayed at our grandmother's house during the summer months. No running water, so we had to go to Miss Baby Bell's well to draw water. Miss Baby Bell smoked a pipe, and she sat on her back step in the morning smoking the pipe. I drew the water, I walked past her, drew the water out of her well, and proceeded to walk home. And she stopped me and she said, "Chanel, did we sleep together last night?" And I said, "No, Miss Baby Bell, you slept in your house, I slept in my grandmother's house." And I proceeded on my way home. I don't know where the belt came from. I just remember when it hit me. And Mr. Speaker, that perhaps began my athletic career because I ran. But that's how villagers deal with no manners. Yes. And they often told us, if you don't listen, you certainly feel. Mr. Speaker, on January the 28th, 40 of us went to Rehoboth Baptist Church on Prince Charles Drive. The senior pastor there is Reverend Dr. Philip Ramming. He wrote the pledge. And then on the 2nd of February, Friday, we went to visit Miss Gwendolyn Clark, who turned 104 years old. And on Sunday, we went to church with her. And Zednes came along and said to her, "What do you have to say to the young people of our country?" And she said, "Listen to your mothers, listen to your fathers, listen to your teachers, have manners, and things will go well with you." Mr. Speaker, I support your ruling, and Engliston is an activist, and that's not bad in and of itself. But whatever you do, there are rules and there are regulations. There are paths that you must travel, and if you allow some leeway to move off the path a little bit, but when you go too far off the path, then you must be drawn back in. Mr. Speaker, hold fast. The rules and the regulations will make this place the place it is supposed to be. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, in 5 years, we would not have achieved much because we would have spent too much time trying to right the ship. Mr. Speaker, I support you.
That I have known you for nearly 50 years. And as was identified earlier, you are the same yesterday as you are today, and will probably, as our friendship has attested, will be tomorrow. And that is a man, a person of unequaled and impeccable integrity, respect, honor, and discipline. And it is probably why you and I have found such intimacy in friendship over these past 5 decades. Few may know, Mr. Speaker, that you are an individual given to a no-nonsense character. But at the same time, sir, in the evolution of your personality, having been touched by the redeeming blood of Jesus Christ, you have been also further seized with a sense of humility and respect. Mr. Speaker, in addition to being a privileged member of this House for the people of South Beach, I am also charged through the graces of the member of Kalani, the Prime Minister, with responsibility for assisting in the evolution and the awakening and the invitation to life of approximately 75,000 of our wonderful, gifted, beautiful young people. And in the first instance of my address in this honorable space, sir, I made a statement which I wish to repeat at this time. Education is everybody's business. It is not in the respectful or exclusive domain of professional educators or the administration of the Ministry of Education or the Department of Education, but rather it is a society's obligation and responsibility. And to that degree and in that respect, sir, I wish to congratulate and endorse and express how grateful I am to you, sir, for assisting in extinguishing the galloping culture of slackness that we find in our Bahamian society. One that seems to be seized with this mindset, poisonous, I may respectfully suggest to you, sir, in which our people seem to think that they can do as they please, when they please, and how they please, without any consequences for their action. In fact, Mr. Speaker, this pervasive and pernicious culture has so gripped and seized a too large percentage of our 75,000 population school members that we find a repudiating sense of ill manners and disrespect and gross insubordination within the school environments in our society. And I've said repeatedly so, that I don't blame the children. I first look at the elders, which have had the responsibility of inculcating a sense of what my grandmother taught me, manners and respect. I cannot give you enough examples, sir, of instances in the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education and throughout our school system, Mr. Speaker, where people are given directives by their superiors and that they willfully, intentionally, and obstreperously refuse to obey. That means rude. And what is troubling, sir? What is troubling, Mr. Speaker? And why I am so proud of you today, sir, is that those who seemingly would have the benefit of years of wisdom and knowledge and experience and education, who I would believe should know better, in fact are worse than the children that they are charged with the responsibility of leading. Having been given the benefit of being chosen by a constituency of persons in this great country of ours, to be a representative in this honorable space, and to take upon oneself this, again, mindset that irrespective of the rules, no matter the regulations, no matter the culture, the discipline, that they can just simply disregard the requirements of order and decency and respect in this honorable place, Mr. Speaker. It is very difficult, sir. There is a Herculean task placed upon this government and the Ministry of Education in inculcating a sense of discipline in our people. And it is no wonder, beyond the technical requirements of oracy and numeracy and literacy, Mr. Speaker, as the Inter-American Development Bank noted in 2012 with a magnanimous study, and again in 2017, it is not just simply about these technical abilities and these skills, but about these what they describe as soft skills, which essentially, again, can be reduced to two terms: manners and respect. And throughout the Latin America and Caribbean community, sir, that employers up and down this hemisphere complains about the fact that our young people come to the workplace not ready, most especially deprived of these technical skills, but in particular absent that what we call these soft skills, the ability to work with one another, teamwork, respect for one another, a sense of communication, sense of manners, a sense of respect, and that they all want to seem to do as they well please. And so, sir, this nation, sir, honors you for assisting in a manner which is before the entire nation by way of the visual medium known as television, and beginning to assist us, especially in the Ministry of Education, to advise our young people, those beginning at approximately 3 years of age until about 17, that there is a responsibility to obey rules and regulations, and that they must do so with honor and respect, sir. And wish on behalf of South Beach, sir, to continue to congratulate you and to thank you for being who you are.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for St. Anne's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to take a slightly different tack, with your leave. If my memory serves me right, the honourable member for Engliston was elected to this chamber in 2002. She came to the chamber the same year I came to the chamber, 2002. She was over here, though, and I was over there. The three of us here, if my memory serves me right, East Grand Bahama, Killarney, and myself, have had the privilege, or the hardship, of serving over there under one of their speakers. The honourable member for Killarney was named and removed from the chamber, and 2 weeks later they came back to then move some motion because they forgot to do it, and they didn't do it the way you laid out very honourably, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Engliston's father sat in this place, as did my father. So she would have been brought up at the feet of someone who knew the rules and the regulations for years. My father was first elected to this house in March the 13th, 1925. Served 51 years uninterrupted. Long forgotten in history. Don't worry about that. Longest serving member of the House. In those days you came in dinner jacket at 8 o'clock at night. That's history. You sat round here. The member for Engliston's father was part of that generation which led the new Bahamas, as they call it, to where we are today. She would appreciate the difference between revolt, uprising, pushing the envelope, but he also respected the chair and the rules of this house, to the point that he told the then leader, Sir Lyndon, bye-bye, I do not want to go down that road with you. He said, you should resign too, but I'm going to resign, if my memory serves me right. Correct. That was the honor of the father of the member for Engliston. We have rules. She knows the rules. I remember one day my father told me, he stood up in this place and said something. The speaker said, well, the honourable member for whatever district he was then, will you please take that back? And he says, Mr. Speaker, I withdraw. I only wish I said more. I tell this story because they knew then, as we know now, that when you make that comment, it is out there. When you retract it, it has already been said. There is no, it's not like whatever the radio where you can push a button and cut someone from saying something. So she knew full well what she was doing, knows full well what she was doing, and continues to know full well what she was doing. And as the member, I'm glad I spoke after the member for South Beach, because he talked about the educational system. So the other day there was a senior member, always on the radio, preaching against this party, came to see me. And we were talking about then and now. He said, you know what? The difference between then and now is I got a ticket from a policeman for riding my bicycle without a light on it. And I used that to compare the member of Engliston with her father, because she knows full well where she was going. It was disrespectful without a light. No torch. No torch to show her where to go. And I just warned the member for Central Andros, well, he knows better, and Exuma, don't follow down that same path because you are going down a tunnel with no light. The three of us, at different times, sat here on that side. And we took the most incredible abuse from the Speaker of the party opposite, numerous speakers. And for 2 terms, I took incredible abuse, 1 term, because in 1 term in opposition in the Senate, 1 term in government, from the Speaker in the other place. And they have the gall to stand up here and accuse the Speaker of saying unfairness. I remember when the member of Centerville, previous member, sat here and said, you know, just like cockroaches, you stamp them out. Said it right, might have probably stand in one of these places to us right over there. That was their behavior. What a difference a day makes. Mr. Speaker, you showed mercy, you showed compassion. They have to learn what it is to be over there and remember what they did to us when we were over there, and don't say anything different, because they are have to follow rules that they themselves set down. And it's not good for one fella and not good for the other. The shoe is on this foot. The government of the member for Killarney will show you the right, honorable, just, and merciful way to govern our Bahamas. It is a new day. This is the People's House. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to say a few words. And really, it is more in defense of this chamber than it is of any particular member or right. This House is considered to be honorable. And our traditions support that position. And I was, quite frankly, a bit disturbed this morning as you greeted the members, showing the respect of the chair to the members, and the reciprocating by the members to the chair with the customary bow, that the leader of the opposition, the member for Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador, refused to do so on 2 occasions. Mr. Speaker, I think that is a very significant and regretful thing to have happened, because it says from the outset that the side opposite intentionally has made the decision that they will not respect the chair and the authority of this House. And by doing so, through you, show disrespect to the members and to the wider Bahamian community. Mr. Speaker, that is typified of the reason we are here today making the interventions that we are today. Mr. Speaker, as the member for St. Anne's mentioned, at least 3 of us sat on that side. Me, the member for East Grand Bahama and Killarney, in the last 5 years. Mr. Speaker, the record will reflect. Speaking for myself, that I stood on that side many a day and made statements. And many a day, the members on this side, I want to use the word attacked. Including the member for Angliston, who, as you will see, continues even in this city to have a special affinity for East Grand Bahama. Where they made me justify every word came out of my mouth. On many occasions, Mr. Speaker, I had to withdraw, even though I know what I said was fact. But I did the honorable thing as instructed by the Speaker, to withdraw. I remember, Mr. Speaker, on one particular occasion where the member on this side, on the then governing side, made an accusation towards me. And I got up and said to the Speaker, Mr. Speaker, he has to prove or withdraw. The Speaker told me, no, you resume your seat. You have to prove he's not right. That happened. But I didn't get up and carry on. I didn't disrespect the order of the chair. I sat down. Because that's what you do, Mr. Speaker. This place, though it appears to be out of order and chaotic, it does have some rules. And the basic rule is respect of the chair. Basic rule. You might not like the ruling. You might disagree vehemently. But you do not have the right to disrespect the chair. I remember, and most of our members here today, are new members. And I remember coming here with some of the same idea that really we don't need to be fighting with all this across the floor noise that we make. Because we are civil people and we ought to be able to say our piece, sit down, let the other person say their piece. But I was reminded that this is an adversarial chamber. And so from time to time you will have vigorous debate. But even in that, there is a level of respect and privilege that is expected of the members, such that you don't get into personal things. And at all times, you pay attention to the Speaker and his rulings. And that is all we're talking about here. Respect for this honorable House, its traditions, and its customs, Mr. Speaker. And again, I think it is instructive for all of us. I think it's instructive for the Bahamian people that while we disagree with one another, at the end of the day, for the most part, we all have the same goal, the same objective, and that is a better Bahamas. And so with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud you for taking the time to explain your position. I know it's not easy sitting in the chair of Speaker because you can't get involved in the debate, but it is no doubt that you have, to this day, defended the honor of this House. There's no way it can be accepted that members can get up while the Speaker is speaking and turn their backs on him and walk out. Absolute disrespect. And so, Mr. Speaker, while I don't want to disadvantage any constituency in this honorable House, the point has to be made that there are standards in this House, there are standards in this country, and some things we just will not tolerate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's now approaching 10 minutes after the hour of 10 o'clock, and parliamentarians have assembled into the chamber of the House of Assembly to prepare for this morning's proceedings. Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Hubert Minnis has arrived, and it seems as though the Speaker of the House of Assembly is about to enter the chamber. The visitors' dock is filled with visitors today, including President of the Bahamas Christian Council, Bishop Delton Fernanda, as well as Bishop Simeon Hall. Several senators are there, including PLP Senator Dr. Michael Darvo. Clayton Sweeting is also there. We also see the former chairman, national chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party, Bradley Roberts. He's also in the visitors' dock today, along with several other visitors who are there, to watch this morning's proceedings. Now, as we said at the beginning of this broadcast, the opposition's motion of no confidence in the Speaker is expected to happen this morning. Also, I want to say that I see the Free National Movement's National Chairman Carl Comer is also sitting in the visitors' dock this morning. But the opposition Progressive Liberal Party's parliamentary team is expected to submit a no confidence vote in the Speaker of the House of Assembly, Halson Moultrie, this morning. That no confidence vote announced on Monday led to an adjournment of the House of Assembly on Monday, and it's a continuation of the follow from 2 weeks ago when the Member of Parliament for Anglerston, Glennis Hannah Martin, was suspended, and just last week the remaining opposition parliamentary team was suspended. We want to once again play the report produced by our Keishla Adderley on what the opposition has communicated and the sidelines of the House sitting.
Fallout continues. The agenda of the House of Assembly is on hold again, with the leader of the opposition and Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador MP Philip Brave Davis, South Andros and Mangrove Key MP Picewell Forbes, and Exuma MP Chester Cooper under suspension. A motion expressing no confidence in the Speaker is pending.
Wish to bring to the attention of this honorable House that the leader of the official opposition has written a letter to the clerk, the acting clerk of the Parliament, and has indicated an intention pursuant to Rule 52 to bring a motion when the House next convenes on Wednesday.
In a statement, Mr. Davis indicated that he, by private note to the Speaker dated the 9th of February 2018, served notice of the intention by him or another member of the opposition to move a vote of no confidence in the Speaker. Mr. Davis has also asked the Speaker to clarify when the 4 suspended members of the PLP will be allowed back into the House so as to avoid any further loss of decorum in the lower chamber. Leader of Government Business in the House, Renwood Wells, noted that resolving this matter is a priority.
Given the gravity of what the leader of the opposition intends to do on Wednesday, the government is obliged, along with this House, to see to it that all members are here on Wednesday, and that that motion is going to take precedence over the entire House agenda as per the House rules. And so we thought it fitting that we would have this Parliament today, we would have our meeting, so that all members would have a right to be here on Wednesday, so that we can get on with the business of this House.
Engliston MP Glenys Hannah Martin, meantime, was eligible to sit in Parliament today, but expressed in a statement her intention to show solidarity with her fellow opposition members and sit out today's session. Outside Parliament, Wells responded to a question about the perception some observers may have over the way House members are spending their time.
Obviously, the House has had to deal with the matters that arose with the suspension, the naming of the honourable member from Engliston, Glenys Hannah Martin, and so that has moved the House off of its agenda. But we are fully committed, come this Wednesday, to getting back on the agenda of the business of the House and doing what is necessary for and on behalf of the Bahamian people.
As you can see on your screen, the majority of the House members are sitting in the chamber, including the entire Opposition Progressive Liberal Party's parliamentary team, the members of Parliament for Engliston, Mangrove Key in Central and South Andros, Exum and Ragged Island, and the leader of the opposition, Philip Davis, who's a member of Parliament for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. The opposition's parliamentary team announced on Monday that they're expected to file a vote of no confidence in the Speaker of the House of Assembly, the Honorable Halson Moultrie. We're awaiting the entrance of Halson Moultrie into the House chambers, but while we await the Speaker's arrival, we want to once again play for you the interview the Deputy House Speaker gave me yesterday on the rules of a no-confidence vote being filed in the House of Assembly today.
I would be sitting in the chair. Well, the Speaker would take the chair at the beginning of the session, and we will go down to agenda or the order of business. And when we get to the point of resolution, the Speaker will either make a statement if he wishes, and then he will yield the chair to the Deputy Speaker. As the Speaker has already indicated to the public and to the House yesterday, the Leader of the Opposition has given notice by motion that they intend to move to send to the Speaker or make a motion for a vote of no confidence in the Speaker at tomorrow's hearing. And so up until we get to the order of business of the resolution, the Speaker will maintain the chair. Once the motion is put to the floor, most likely will be moved by either the Leader of the Opposition or the Deputy Leader or anyone in opposition. That motion will be moved and it will have to be seconded. Once that is done, the chair will entertain any discussion on the matter. Obviously, this is not a regular occurrence in the House of Assembly, in the Bahamas or anywhere else, and so the hearing will be a little different than what you would normally see. The mover will have an opportunity to speak for an hour. All other members will have up to half an hour to speak, and so we would get through that portion of the business tomorrow. It's important to say that this particular motion takes precedent over any other business of the House tomorrow. So all of the items before that would be simple orders that we would normally go through, making sure everybody's there, notices from the Senate, etc., etc. But the substantive business of the House would not be able to proceed until this particular motion is dealt with. We would do the traditional vote. But the important thing is that we're hoping that the matter is dealt with very professionally. We're hoping that the matter be dealt with very quickly, so that we can move on to doing the business of the people, which is moving some of the bills that we've already tabled. And we hope that, notwithstanding everything that's happened in the last few days, that finally we'll be able to bring resolution in this matter, and that the Bahamian people will see all of us in the House doing what we're voted there to do, which is to pass bills, make laws, and to really debate and address so many issues that we have facing our nation today. I think with respect to morale, we came into this place knowing that this is a place of advocacy, if I could use that term, of debate. Obviously, we're not happy about the fact that the business or the agenda of the House is being stalled to some extent because of this. Would we understand these things happen, as I say, very rarely, and that we're eager to get past it. We're not going to let it hold us back from our agenda. When I say that, I mean the governing party. We're very anxious to move on and to do the people's business. We have lots of legislation or bills that are still pending debate in the House, and we're hoping that once this opportunity is had to members of Parliament tomorrow, that the matter will finally be resolved, and persons who wish to give comment, contribute to the debate, will obviously have that opportunity. As the chair, and as you would know, every member of the House of Assembly have the privilege of being able to speak. No one could tell them not to speak. Once this matter is resolved, would not be able to come up again unless the House is prorogued, unless there's a new session of the House. And so it'll be very, very important, given what we've been seeing over the last few days, to put this behind us. As I said, this rarely happens. It's not new to the Bahamas, actually. I mean, the Free National Movement have had, at least in modern time, at least two of their speakers have no confidence vote being put against them. And so this is nothing new. It's unfortunate we had to go to this point now, but it's a part of what happens in parliaments throughout the world, not only in the Bahamas. And it's a right that the opposition or anyone has to put to the floor. Rarely do you see no confidence vote succeeding. That's because, as we know, in most jurisdictions, speakers have vast discretions. There are rules which we follow in this honorable House, and most members, if not all, tend to adhere to those rules. Simply disagreeing with the views of a speaker, you would not normally have persons making such motions in circumstances. But I think the Bahamas should not be so concerned that our democracy, that our House is in any despair. Simply to know that this is a procedure that happens in the House sometimes, and that I think I speak for all members that we are still interested in moving the agenda of the people's business forward. So I would see this as in some way a move to really get back to the people's business, and to say, listen, everybody has their views, and we could finally put this to rest as per the rules of the House. And so there's nothing, as I said earlier, there's nothing new to what's happening. But obviously we have to follow the rules, and we have to allow those persons who think that they should make the motion, we have to allow them to do that. When I was voted in as Deputy Speaker, I came with the responsibility of having to do just this. My job is to sit in the chair when the Speaker isn't in the chair. Obviously, there are other responsibilities with respect to the Committee of the Whole, etc., etc. But this office allows for the continuity of the business of the House being carried on, even in the absence of the Speaker. So, it's going to be interesting to sit tomorrow and hear the various members give their contribution. But I trust that, given the public interest, that we would act respectfully, we would act responsibly, and that we would allow the Deputy Speaker taking the chair to be able to conduct the business of the House in a very orderly manner and in accordance with the rules of the House. We are governed by them, and we, in order to make sure that the business goes through smoothly, I just want to caution my colleagues in the House to let's try and do that tomorrow, and put this chapter in this session behind us. So, I mean, historically, we've had it. There's been deputy speakers who had to do this very same business that I'll have to do tomorrow, and I'm going to do it the best of my ability and try to maintain the decorum that people expect from us in this honorable House.
It's now 10:21, and House members are patiently awaiting the arrival of the Speaker of the House of Assembly into the House chambers. Getting up and returning to his seat is the Member of Parliament for Bamboo Town, Renwood Wells, who's the leader of government business in the House of Assembly. As you can see, the House of Assembly is filled with visitors as well as the media, all awaiting the proceedings for this morning, where it's expected that the opposition's parliamentary team will submit a vote of no confidence in the Speaker of the House of Assembly. The entire chamber is patiently awaiting the arrival of the Speaker of the House of Assembly. But as we await his arrival, we'll once again play for you some of the contributions made by the members of Parliament for Fox Hill, South Beach, St. Anne's, and East Grand Bahama, who supported the Speaker's suspension of the Member of Parliament for Anglerston, Gladys Hannah Martin.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the wonderful people of the great constituency of Fox Hill. Mr. Speaker, soon after you took your post, as you walked up and down this chamber to your chair, someone remarked that the Speaker reminded him of somebody's doting and benevolent grandfather. Grandfathers tend to let grandchildren go where they didn't let their children go. And so those grandchildren take great liberties, Mr. Speaker. So while Seabreeze, Mr. Speaker, said you had to nip it in the bud, it's not with temerity, but, Mr. Speaker, it went on too long, in my estimation. You, in your generous heart, as a grandfather, allowed it to go on too long, and I am here to support you that you finally said enough is enough. Mr. Speaker, I am reminded of my younger days, and I am from a village, a little village, a traditional village, and by its very definition, villagers live simple lives. Good morning, good afternoon, yes sir, yes ma'am. That's the way it is. And I have a little story, Mr. Speaker. We stayed at our grandmother's house during the summer months. No running water, so we had to go to Miss Baby Bell's well to draw water. Miss Baby Bell smoked a pipe, and she sat on her back step in the morning smoking the pipe. I drew the water, I walked past her, drew the water out of her well, and proceeded to walk home. And she stopped me and she said, "Chanel, did we sleep together last night?" And I said, "No, Miss Baby Bell, you slept in your house, I slept in my grandmother's house." And I proceeded on my way home. I don't know where the belt came from. I just remember when it hit me. And Mr. Speaker, that perhaps began my athletic career because I ran. But that's how villagers deal with no manners.
Yes.
And they often told us, if you don't listen, you certainly feel. Mr. Speaker, on January the 28th, 40 of us went to Rehoboth Baptist Church on Prince Charles.
We now cut our taped review of the House of Assembly to go live to the House of Assembly's proceedings, where the House Speaker, Halson Moultrie, has arrived.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, members of the clergy, from time tomorrow became famous when a young priest, St. Valentine in 27 AD, lost his head under the rule of Claudius the Cruel. Legend has it that while in jail, St. Valentine left a farewell note for the jailer's daughter. who had become his friend, and signed it from your Valentine. But something good took place February 14th, 1929. Sir Alexander Fleming introduced penicillin to the world's market, and many lives from there on were healed and are still being healed. Today, on this 14th day of February, in the year of our Lord 2018, is recommended the penicillin called peace and love for the solution of all the challenges and problems which we are facing. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Love never fails. 1 Corinthians 13:13. Now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Jesus speaks 14:23-27. Replied, anyone loves me, he will obey my teaching. My Father will love and will come and make our home with him. He who does not love me will not obey my teaching. These words you hear not belong to the Father who sent me. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. John 13:34. A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you. I speak peace and love among you today and every day. Shall we pray? O Lord, our governor, bless the leaders of our land, that we may be a people at peace among ourselves and blessing to other nations of the earth. For our honorable speaker, grant to him wisdom beyond his years in administrating the affairs in this honorable House of Assembly. For our Prime Minister and members of his cabinet and all the administrative authority, grant wisdom and grace in the exercise of their duties. Grant grace to your servants, O Lord, inclusive of our opposition members, led by Honorable Philip Bird Davis, the wisdom and knowledge to carry out their duties in this honorable House of Assembly decently and in order. Now, Monday morning we prayed together the ancient prayer of St. Francis of Assisi's prayer, and now that our full complement of honorable members are in the House this morning, please join me in praying this prayer once again this morning. It's on your desk. You ready? Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, where there is despair, there is darkness, light. There is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in guiding that we are born to eternal life. Amen. Praying now together the prayer Jesus taught us to pray, say, Our Father, in heaven, in thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, Love one another today. Amen?
Dr. Hubert Minnis, Peter Turnquest, Brent Simonet, Desmond Bannister, Renwood Wells, Jeffrey Lloyd, Dr. Dwayne Sands, Marvin Dames, Frankie Campbell, Dionisio de Aguilar, Michael Pintard, Darren Henfield, Romuald Ferreira, Lenisha Rose, Renzel Rose, Ellsworth Johnson, Philip Davis, Ron Miller, Bakisha Parker Edgecombe, Iram Lewis, Carlton Bolag, James Albury, Travis Robinson, Adrian Gibson, Donald Saunders, Frederick McAlpine, Heinz Johnson, Mark Humes, Michael Folks, Miriam Reckley Emmanuel, Reese Chipman, Reuben Ramming, Ricky Mackey, Shannon Dawn Cartwright, Charnel Ferguson, Glennis Hannah Martin, Faisal Fall, Chester Cooper.
Good morning, honorable members, and a happy Valentine's Day to all of you. There will be no communication by the Speaker at this time. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Lying of documents by ministers. Statements and communications by ministers. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I hope you would beg my indulgence. I'm still battling with a flu, and therefore my voice may be somewhat distorted. Mr. Speaker, I've often said that Grand Bahama is the headwind that must be fixed in order for the entire Bahamas to fully succeed. Therefore, my government has paid particular interest and focus on the revitalization of Grand Bahama. We are on track to approving the sale and reopening of the Grand Lucayan, which will significantly improve the economy of Grand Bahama. I'm also pleased that my government has approved in principle the recently announced project in West End. Mr. Speaker, the government of Bahamas approved Oban Energies to commence an oil refinery and oil storage facility in Grand Bahama. My government has recently completed negotiating the heads of agreement, which paves the way for the commencement of this important project. This agreement articulates how this development can proceed. On Monday at 10 a.m. at the office of the Prime Minister, his heads of agreement will be signed. The following week, Mr. Speaker, another heads of agreement, Monday coming. The following week, another heads of agreement will be signed. And the following week, another heads of agreement will be signed. Mr. Speaker, we are on the road to revitalizing both Grand Bahama and the entire Bahamas. I am advised that Oban's Energy's management team has been involved in large energy infrastructure projects around the world and brings over 30 years of large, complex construction experience. Oban Energies has further advised that first phase will consist of 4 million barrels of crude storage, a harbor, and deep-sea loading dock. to service large vessels and the construction of a 50,000 barrel per day refinery. In addition, Oban will build up to 20 million barrel liquid bulk storage facility and a 250,000 barrel per day refinery. Oban Energies have committed to creating 600 direct jobs and 1,000 indirect jobs during construction. The oil refinery has an estimated project cost of up to $4 billion US, and the terminal have an estimated project cost of up to $1.5 billion US. Mr. Speaker, this is a very significant development for Grand Bahama, and I wish to note some points from the heads of agreement. The developer shall contribute funds in the sum of $100,000 per annum to be used for community projects and the development of East Grand Bahama. There shall be established a local community advisory board to determine the use of said funds and shall be comprised of form mutually agreed to both the government and the developer. The developer acknowledges the importance of the marine environment to the government and therefore shall provide an amount of equal to $150,000 US to an accredited research institute as may be mutually selected by the government and developer. Such payment shall be made by the date that is 12 months after the commencement of construction of the terminal and/or oil refinery. The developer will use commercially reasonable efforts to use Bahamian materials, Bahamian professional services, and other Bahamian services in connection with the implementation of the development plan. The developer shall cooperate with the government to put in place and sustain during the course of the development multidisciplinary on-the-job technical skills training and apprenticeship programs designed to equip the developer's Bahamian employees with the level of technical proficiency reasonably necessary for the promotion and advancement, and shall render reasonable periodic assistance toward curriculum development at the University of the Bahamas, provided that the annual cost to the developer of the foregoing shall not exceed $100,000 or $250,000 US in the aggregate. Mr. Speaker, I think this is great news for the Bahamas, and the Bahamas will see more to come in the coming weeks. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, we are at the point in our order of business where a substantive motion will be considered. As you order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. As I had started to say, you would be aware that there is a substantive motion on the agenda which is couched in the form of a resolution. As the Speaker is the subject of this motion, I will vacate the chair and allow the Deputy Speaker to preside over the House deliberation in this matter. I now vacate the chair to the Deputy Speaker.
Member for Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador. I see that the resolution notes your name. I presume that you're prepared to proceed. The chair recognizes the member for Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note the admonition from the chaplain about love today. That is the day of love, and this is Valentine's Day. Without paying any deference to it, today for me it's more importantly the Ash Wednesday, a day when it's time for us that starts the season of Lent, a period that calls for reflection and penitence. Which is very appropriate that today I stand to move this motion when we commence such a season. Mr. Chairman, today I bring the case of Today we bring the case of Halson Moultrie before this Parliament, the member for Nassau Village, and asks the House to condemn his behavior for the following acts. And I'll describe it as this. Count 1. A statement made to the House on the 7th of February in response to we do not know what. The unlawful, count 2, the unlawful, wrongful, capricious, arbitrary, and disproportionate suspension of the Member of Parliament for Engliston on the 31st of January. Count 3, the willful, malicious, and personal attacks on a private citizen in a statement of the 7th of February in this House. Count 4, attacking the staff of the House of Assembly. Count 5, disgracing the role and reputation of the office of the Speaker of the House. Mr. Speaker, just let me point out the reasons for bringing this resolution of condemnation and censure, in a sense, are more significant than the acts which led up to the events today. The primary reason is that the Speaker has descended into the fray, into the mud pit, and by doing so has irretrievably damaged the role of Speaker as we understand it in our parliamentary democracy. He is the enforcer of the rules. To do so, he must be impartial, but more importantly, seen to be impartial. His responses cannot be personal. They must be dispassionate. The Speaker is very much like a judge. In fact, the position is what we call quasi-judicial. He is the protector of the rights and privileges of the House, often described as ancient rights and privileges. You'll recall that when the House of Assembly opens after an election, at the start of the session, as Her Majesty's representative comes to the House, the door is closed in the face of that representative. And the representative must knock on the door and be granted entrance by the Speaker. The Speaker is the first commoner of the land. He defends the rights of members. He should not oppress members. The record will show that what the Speaker did in this instance was to compromise those fundamental aspects of his role. This makes his continuation in the role untenable. Some have said, looking at the map which faces us, that this is an impossible hurdle for the opposition to climb. That may be so on the plane of mathematics. However, this is not about mathematics. I remind the House that we fight on a higher plane in some matters. There ought to be consensus and agreement on how we conduct our affairs. That social construct has been destroyed and broken by the actions of the Speaker, and he ought to be condemned for doing so. This is also not a personal matter of forgiveness, as the Speaker seems to feel. Instead of being silent, having committed these grave offenses against public order and decency, he did not have the good sense to be quiet, but instead has doubled down to the point of intransigence and says he would do it again. How does he expect that going forward, without one act of contrition, his position can be tenable? It is, in fact, the opposite, as he himself admitted in a Tribune article of the 9th of February, that operations of this institution will be affected moving forward as a result of what he said, authored by him. The difficulty going forward has been authored by him. Therefore, it is profoundly untenable, no matter the math. Whether we win this vote or not, his head is forever covered in shame. He is deluged in iniquity. I see much reverence I hear today. He has the mark of Cain on him. And there will be a cloud over his brow in perpetuity. The ethical, moral high ground in this matter is that personal attacks are reprehensible, not allowed. He, as Speaker, is not allowed to descend into the mud pit. He must remain calm and above the fray. The record will show that he did not do that. On the 7th of February, the Speaker delivered a statement to the House, a written statement. In that statement, he called for the suspension of our colleague, the member for Engliston. The calling of the suspension was to correct an error in the procedure of the House. The act of causing the member to be named and suspended in the first instance for 2 days was wrong according to our rules. It was wrong. The rules required a motion to be made and carried for a member to be suspended. that motion to be moved by the leader of the House, or in his absence, the member acting for him. That is Rule 8810 of our rules. The member must have committed any of the specified offenses that is set out in Rule 88.4, again in the Act, in the rules. The member may be named, and in naming the member must be informed of what offense is being committed. The Speaker then invites the motion, and after the motion is made, it is then put forthwith to be voted upon. And that's after the motion is made, it is then put forthwith to be voted upon. Again, that is in Rule 88.4. But this ingenuous meaning given to forthwith, as it pertains to Rule 88, is revealed upon a proper conjugation of the sentence in which it appears and the context in which it is used. Forthwith is irrelevant until there is a motion. No motion was made when the Speaker suspended and named a member. No motion was made before the Speaker as I capriciously suspended the member from Engliston. And just so that we are clear, contrary to what the Speaker said on the 7th of February, that I indicated on the 31st of January, at the time, named and suspended, and indicated at that time that the question would be put at the next sitting of Parliament, which is today. He said that he indicated, when he named and suspended his member, that he told Parliament that the motion will be put on this day. That's not what he said. And so what is so curious about it, we got the Hansard. He released the Hansard to us. So he knew what he said. But yet still knowing what he said, he came and misleads Parliament, right, to aid his disingenuous interpretation of Rule 88. Because what he did on that day, and I read from the Hansard, and I read his words, and I invite those who are interested just to compare what he told Parliament on the 7th, he said or indicated, and what he in fact did and indicated on that day. And what he said was, the member of Engliston, and I read from the transcript, Hansard, the member for Engliston, Dennis Hanneman, is named by this chair, and all sympathizers who want to support can behave accordingly. A decision on the period of suspension of the member for Engliston will be determined, and this Parliament will be informed. That's what he said. He said that he will determine how long she will be suspended, and then he will tell us. That's what he said, all against the rules. And then he notified the Sergeant at Arms not to let her enter the precincts. So you see, this Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I just read those transcripts just to show what we have in the Speaker. He would have given us the transcript we read. But yet still, having given it to us, he knows that it's very, very easy and verifiable to show that he was not telling Parliament what actually transpired on that day. His words. But then what is so interesting? All of you, just sat all of you. The majority then stepped in to protect that wrongdoing by supporting that act of wrongdoing by the Speaker, with no less a person than the Prime Minister compounding the travesty by calling the member for Engliston dishonorable in her conduct. We must not forget how it all started. It started because the member for Engliston was standing up for the rights of two women with children, young children, fired by the government for political reasons. That was her assertion, her profound belief, and she stood by that belief. The Speaker was supposed to protect her right to free speech. He did not. Instead, he sided with the majority and struck the matter from the record. Fine, that was his right to do, as it was her right not to withdraw when was asked to do so. After that, he was functus officio. He asked her to withdraw, she elected not to, which is her right to do, and he had the right to expunge it, which he did. He then became functus officio. Then he went further and created a situation, what I term as a double jeopardy, and sentenced the MP from Engliston a second time by suspending her for 2 days. His actions were replete, Mr. Chairman, with procedural errors. The Speaker is supposed to allow and protect the privilege of the right of access to the House. He did not. Instead, he prevented, by his order, Mrs. Hannah Martin from returning to the House on the 7th of February. This is the second violation of her privilege. What is worse, however, is that the Speaker compounded the issue, not only in the vote which he called for wrongly, in our view, but he ignored the minority again when we asked to present the facts to show him the errors of his ways. He ignored us. The Speaker refused to recognize me. The record would reflect, and you look at the proceedings, the record would reflect that immediately following the roll call of members, I stood to be recognized. The Speaker refused to recognize me. I stood to speak to the absence of the member of Engliston and to seek to bring stability and sobriety to chaos caused by the action of the Speaker in naming and suspending her contrary to the rules, as I pointed out, to demonstrate the error of his ways. I remained standing to be recognized, but he proceeded to recognize the leader of government business instead, the member for Bamboo Town. There was no doubt who rose first to speak. There was no doubt who rose first to speak. All of you saw it. Right? And I should have been recognized and heard first. Rule 8 of the 74 rules specifically speaks to the fact that the member rising first should be heard first. This is also provided for in Rule 33.3 of the 2005 rules. The Speaker has no discretion, as he believes he does, as to whether to recognize me or not once I rose. His duty was to hear what I had to say, and then he could deal with what I had to say. Either tell me, well, I hear what you say, sit down, I'll want to hear further, and sit down, whatever. But he had to recognize me, and that is what the rules say. All right? Now, unless two members rise at the same time, then he could choose to which one he would recognize. But I stood, and he refused to recognize. Again, an egregious breach of the rights of members in this House. I say, on this occasion, the Speaker fell into error again, and thereafter acted in a capricious and arbitrary manner by suspending me and the other two members of the opposition because we were walking out of the chamber. So the flip side, you got to understand the rules. There's no rule. So I'll get to that because they don't understand the rules either. While the Speaker was speaking, I could walk out at any time, right? Except on one occasion. Anytime, any member could walk out of this, and I'll show you the rule on that as well. Right? And if you listen to someone who's been here on your side, Frank Watson, who told you what the rule was, you'll understand. Perhaps you all should consult some of your former colleagues to understand what's going on in this house. If you don't want to listen to us, if you don't want to listen to us, consult and learn. Right? Yeah, you could call Papa and all. Papa will help you all. Frank Watson, there are a number of senior seasoned parliamentarians from whom you all could learn. Right? Right? So, we were walking out, so we got out of the chamber and they suspended us. So the flip side of the coin of egress, that means coming to the house, is ingress. And he violated yet another fundamental principles by suspending us arbitrarily. Mr. Chairman, it gets worse from there. The Speaker then piled on with invective from the protection of the chair, attacking private citizens, a member of that other place, attack members in this chambers and staff of this institution. That's what he did. All y'all sat there, said nothing. Nothing. I have a list of all who spoke, who applauded, who commended, who applauded, who commended, who talk about nipping in the bud. I mean, that's what y'all did. Clap and laugh. And I just want to recount some of the things he had to say, because it's important for this record and for people to discuss it. Here's what the Speaker had to say about the private citizen Maurice Steins, the former clerk of the House. I thought that the retired clerk was my friend. I remember when I was in third-party politics as leader of the Bahamian Freedom Alliance. The retired clerk would call me all the time and provided me with material to attack the Ingram administration. Let me pause here a minute. Be careful what you call him and talk about him, because you know he might talk. Now, I ain't gonna talk what we talk about. You expect me? No, you know, I mean, whoever spoke to me, since this matter, I'll not speak to that. I'll not speak to it. Right? I thought, continuing what the Speaker had to say, I thought that he was championing the cause of good governance and democracy. But alas, he was only trying to help the PLP, as he seemed to be doing today, while also attacking the acting and hopefully soon to be confirmed Clerk of Parliament. He continued, I had the opportunity of working with the apparently troubled former clerk from May 24th, 2017 through August 31st, 2017. And I can say at this time, thank God for attrition. Imagine trusting, working, and relying on the advice of someone who has now publicly expressed his innermost feelings and the kind of political venom directed at the Speaker in the letter to the editor. Thank you very much, Mr. Retired Clerk. May your soul rest in peace. That's what the Speaker had to say. None of y'all said anything about it. That was all right. Fuck it. I was slamming on the desk, cheering and applauding. He said, here's what he said about me and my wife. I cry shame on the member for Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador. Ordinarily, I would not respond to such nonsense, but the honorable member and I wished that he was, and then he said, and I wished that he was still present, so I could address him directly. Now, I was out of the chambers, and he wished that I was present for what he had to say about me and my wife. You think he... Huh? You think he's settled? You think he's all right? He wanted me to be present so he could tell me things about me and my wife and expect that to be okay. I say no more about that. All right? All right? And that's what he said. He said he has provoked the chair. I don't know how I provoked him. I had nothing to say to him in here. He didn't let me talk. He didn't recognize me. But he said, I don't know what I did.
to provoke him. He has provoked the chair and forced the chair to defend my integrity. When did I assault his integrity? I don't even know. You know, he said, right? Well, he should deal with me outside the house. Tell me outside the house. And I remember what I said too.
Okay, well, say what you said, though.
Yeah, I know what I said.
Say what you said.
Right?
Say it on the record.
I know
on the record, though. Say what you said on the record.
Then he goes on to say.
Say what you said on the record. Say it on, put it on the record in the House.
I go further, Mr. Speaker. While I can give you more than 90 reasons. Look, listen. While I can give you more than 90 reasons. 90 reasons. Why the member for Cat Island, Rumkins and Salvador's allegation. Hey, y'all continue to laugh, man. I know y'all have. That's okay. Yeah, Rumkin. The allegation is absolutely absurd. I shall confine my response to the fact that I'm a married man. I'm married to a beautiful and wonderfully made Baintown woman, and I want to emphasize to the member that my wife is an indigenous Bahamian woman, and that I have had over those 38 years no reason for divorce. You know, I will not go to the level of the speaker. I just leave it for the public to judge, which they have been doing. And I leave those of you who know me, know my wife, know my role, and know what she's been doing, they will judge him. So, and I will not, he's gone low, but I'll remain where I am. And here's what he had to say about the member from that other place. The member has allowed, in my estimation, reprobates and perverts the track records of denying and hating women to insert such a ludicrous assertion into his press release. My name might begin with an M, but the first three letters are M-O-U and not M-I-T. Don't mix me up. I'm not a soft, powder puff man. I'm a real man. Real men don't do these things. Real men don't do these things. In each quotation, Mr. Chairman, there appears to be some personal and misdirected animus. Each of those persons deserved an unqualified apology and withdrawal of the words. In the case of the attacks on private citizens and the member from that other place, I'm advised that attorneys are exploring the use of constitutional remedy to seek redress against the speaker for the attacks. In the case for the member of Engliston, the House should by resolution reverse the actions of the speaker, because it is a blot on her record which must be removed. The remedy and response on a whim and fancy to the member for Exuma and Ragged Island is clearly disproportionate. The speaker used a hammer when a fly swat would have done the work. In fact, he needed to take no action at all, since a member has the freedom to leave the chambers. The speaker could not have known whether the members wanted to use the bathroom. He would not have known why we were walking out. And the only rule, Mr. Speaker, for the members opposite who do not know, right, the only rule dealing with when a member may leave the chamber is when the speaker is putting a question. And that is Rule 32.2. That's the only time. If the speaker is putting a question, you could ask leave to leave. But other than that, anyone can leave at any time. Just look at Rule 32.2. So it is possible, Mr. Chairman, that for going out, restroom, whatever purpose, the member was suspended. A member who has been in this place for only 9 months, and he's amongst the mildest mannered and agreeable of members. The speaker has whimsically and capriciously and injudiciously ruined his reputation. The same can be said for the member for South Andros, who said and did nothing on that day to have warranted that slap at his reputation by the whimsical arbitrary, capricious, and injudicious actions of the Speaker. So, notwithstanding the matter, today we seek to make a cogent and airtight case for the removal of the Speaker. He cannot be allowed to continue. If he were a man of some grace, he would have stepped down on Monday. The country expects him to do the right thing. The country does. The side opposite was faced with this ethical dilemma before. And in the face of that, Sidney Collie, as Minister for Local Government, now Ambassador Sidney Collie, did the right thing. He did the right thing and he resigned. That was a much lesser offense than the grave personal assaults in which the Speaker has engaged. The problem is exacerbated by the fact that the members opposite, instead of suspending the House when the Speaker determined to go down this vile personal track, enjoyed what the Speaker was doing and supported it. They reveled in it. They supported it even though the Speaker cast aspersions on some of them. I repeat that. They reveled in it. They supported it even though the Speaker cast aspersions on some of you with homophobic slurs. Attacks on divorced people and attacks on those with foreign wives. And you all sat right there. Said nothing. Did nothing. He was attacking all too. You all did nothing. Yeah, they know they are. The government of the people's time, banging on the table, laughed and joked as the Speaker engaged in homophobic slurs, in attacks on a member's wife and personal family affairs, on the reputations of the House staff, and in seeking to mount as defense, made a most egregious attack on a retired public servant. One member went so far as to give comfort and aid to wife beating through her clumsy language. Yet the Speaker now says to the press, instead of being quiet, that all is forgiven and we can move on. No, sir. We cannot move on. No, sir. What you have done is unpardonable and inexcusable. You have embarrassed, debased, and desecrated the office of Speaker. The majority should not protect or cloak you in your error and buffoonery. You also should not cloak and protect him. They also should assist him in finding an exit. That is the right thing to do. This is not about mathematics. This is not about mathematics. This is about the right thing to do. It is about voting with your conscience today, not against it. Will you vote to keep a man in office who has so desecrated the office? Will you? It is on a day like this. It is on a day like this. I wish we were not compelled by the straitjacket of our party system. And I hope that you all allow persons to speak who want to speak on this matter today. I repeat that, man. It is on a day like this. Oh, why say it? Why say that? No, I'm not going to. As I said, I don't disclose private conversations. So you have to. All I'm asking, see, I've been driven to say what I'm saying now because I know it is on a day like this that I wish you're not compelled by the straitjacket of our party system. Loosen the conscience. This is not about PLP and FNM. And I repeat, this is about the right thing to do. Those who know me, and let me just digress a bit here, Mr. Speaker. Those who know me know that I always advocate for the pursuit of things that make for peace. Because I'm a firm believer that the common good could only be built up when things that make for peace are pursued. That's been my mantra. Yes, I am. Yeah. And that's grounded in me. That's in me. Right? That's why I expect you to do the right thing. Do the right thing. Right? And this I did. I did this, Mr. Speaker. Had the government hearkened to the voice of reason, we will not be here today. If they'd listened, we will not be here today. Mr. Speaker, I went and I obtained a transcript of the proceedings that I read from earlier. I noted from reading the transcript that the member for Angleton was right, that the Speaker had misquoted her, casting her in an unfavorable light. The Speaker's quote appears to have been his interpretation of what she said, rather than the exact words said, even though he attributed to her exact words. The question in my mind, having looked at the transcript, was whether the Speaker's interpretation was reasonable in the circumstances. That's all. That's the only issue there. It was much ado about nothing. But the Speaker didn't allow it to get there, and none of you who are supposed to be aiding and assisting him ever rose to assist. I did. That's why I intervened. I did so hoping to right the debate. But again, everyone just sat. My intervention at the point where the Speaker was at the height of his broadside, was at the height of his broadside of Angleton. And I was pointing out that what he was doing was unfair. And no right-thinking person to say it is fair for a person to embark upon an inquiry about somebody and don't let that person know that they're embarking on that inquiry, and then make findings that are adverse to that person. Without, first of all, one, letting the person know that you're embarking on the inquiry. Secondly, at least letting the person know what you're looking at and providing it to them and give them an opportunity to at least respond. But you don't do none of that. And that's why I said it was unfair. That's what he's doing. Of course, he did it in his diatribe on the 7th of February. But that's what I tried. He took umbrage to me suggesting this. And he ordered I take my seat. And he continued the broadside, ignoring any intervention on the part of the opposition. How could you expect us to remain in those sort of circumstances? We left the chamber, then he named and suspended her, as I read earlier. At the next sitting of the House, recognizing that the suspension and naming was wrong, as I pointed out in the rules, we came to the House accompanied by the member for Angleton. And she was told by the Sergeant at Arms that he was instructed by the Speaker to prevent her entry. That's what happened. Right. That's what happened. Now, in pursuit of peace, Monday before the 7th, I met with the leader of government business, I think for at least 2 hours almost, or more, to determine a solution to avoid further chaos. That's what I did. I went, said, look, y'all, this is much ado about nothing. The Speaker erred in doing the suspending and naming. Here's why he erred in doing so. Here are the rules. And here, let's look at the factors that led him to do what he did. And there's a solution. Right? I went out of my way. I made a copy of the transcript. I just didn't make a copy of the transcript. I even marked, I said, see, here are the things that you should look at. I marked the lines. I said, look at it, and let's solve this matter, because this is much to do about nothing. For 2 hours or so, he's indicated to me that, fine, I understand what you're saying, but I think we need to, let's sit with the Speaker and let's talk this through and get the resolution. I said, okay. He told me he's going to arrange the meeting that evening, Monday afternoon. I waited for his call. We tried to reach him after I see it was getting late. Didn't get him. Right? Didn't hear from him. About 6, after 6, shortly after 6, I had the occasion to speak to the Attorney General. I recounted my meeting with the leader of the leader of government business. I recounted it with him, pointed out what I thought should happen. I said, now as the government legal advisor, you might wish to intervene and let's try to resolve this matter. We don't need this chaos. We don't need this. And he said to me, okay, well, he will meet with the leader and they will get back to me tomorrow. And I hope, I said, before cabinet meeting. Right? That's what I said. 9:30 came the Tuesday morning. 9:45 came the Tuesday morning. Heard nothing. I called the Prime Minister. I recounted my conversations held with you, the leader of government business, with the Attorney General. I said, look, we need to work this out. This is not difficult to work out. Right? This chaos is just much ado about nothing. The Speaker just has to recognize whether this is an interpretation issue and let's move on. That's what I did. That's before, because it was wrong, and remember, for Anglican, we were coming back to chambers to do the people's work. That's why I engaged you. I was pursuing the things for peace. Didn't hear anything. Prime Minister told me that he'll make sure that someone get back to me, or he will get back to me, or someone will get back to me before the day is out. No one came back to me. During the lunch period, I tried to reach the leader. We got no call. Nothing. Yes. About 7 or 8 o'clock that night, I got a text message from the leader of government opposition business, number 4, South Andros, right? Because he was not feeling well, he sent a text, say, listen, they say they can move this motion. They can move the motion and suspend the member for Anglican. And then they want to debate these other 2 bills. I say, what? That's what happened. I'm pursuing peace. And what they do? They spurred me, don't speak back to me. And then what I was trying to avoid, I said, the fact that you now know that you have to move a motion for the suspension, you are thereby compounding the wrong, because you know he didn't have the power to do it. And now you're going to just compound the wrong. Gentlemen. That's what I did. And so, as I said, I just thought I would let the public know that it was nothing on this side that caused this chaos. This is all authored by them, by yourselves, authored by them. I attempted, right, to resolve this chaos, but no, the mathematics will deal with it. But as I said, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, this is not about maths. This is doing what is right. Speaker, if we were in the civil arena, outside this Parliament, the Speaker would have been sanctioned for libel and possible criminal libel, what he alleged on 7th of February. If he were a judge, actions would have been taken for his removal from office. The High Court of Parliament is being asked to try this case. The Court of Public Opinion is called upon to condemn the Speaker's conduct, which we are doing. You know, I wish to read the words of the Nassau Guardian in extensio, and I adopt them as my own. from the editorial of the 12th of February. As you know, Mr. Chairman, the Nassau Guardian has been an adoring ally of the FNM. And here's what they said under the headline, "The Speaker went too far." And I read it, Mr. Speaker. As I said, I adopted it. A Speaker in a democratic House of Parliament should be an impartial judge. He should seek in his actions, rulings, and utterances to ensure the rules and dignity of Parliament are maintained. In democracies, Parliament is a place where social conflict should play out absent of violence. Different interests, ideologies, parties, and people should clash, with the hope that good governance and good policies emerge. It's the Speaker's job to manage all that. In the most developed democratic parliamentary traditions, those speakers are from particular parties. Once elected or selected, they no longer caucus with their side. This is to further the notion that a speaker is an impartial custodian of Parliament. Speaker Halson Moultrie embarrassed himself and demeaned the office of Speaker and the House by his actions on February 7th. He went on a tirade from the chair, directed at former Clerk of Parliament Maurice Tynes and Leader of the Opposition Philip Brave Davis. He called Tynes a troubled man who executed a politically motivated attack on him. Tynes, who retired last year, wrote a letter to the editor recently saying he was disturbed and alarmed by Moultrie's decision to name and suspend Engliston MP Glenys Hannah Martin. I had the opportunity of working with the apparent troubled retired clerk from May 24, 2017 through August 31, 2017, and all I can say at this time is thank God for attrition, Moultrie said. Continuing this article and editorial, imagine trusting, working with, and relying on the advice of someone who has now publicly expressed his innermost feelings at the kind of political venom directed at the Speaker in a letter to the editor. Thank you very much, Mr. Retired Clerk. May your soul rest in peace. Continuing the editorial. Continuing the quote. Davis, Exhumer's and Ragged Island MP Chester Cooper, Mangrove Key and South Orange MP Picewells Forbes gathered their belongings and exited the chamber as Moultrie rambled. The Speaker asked them to sit. When they didn't, he suspended them for 2 sittings. All 4 of the opposition Progressive Liberal Party members were suspended. It got worse. Quotes continuing. Moultrie added homophobia and xenophobia to his rant. He said he is a real man, not a soft powder puff man, and accused Davis of allowing reprobates and perverts who deny and hate women to insert ludicrous allegations into his press statements. He was trying to attack a PLP member by suggesting the person is gay. There's nothing wrong with being gay, of course. We don't know if the person is or is not. Our society, however, is very homophobic. Moultrie wanted to demean this PLP by his suggestion. Moultrie made allusions to in criticism of the Leader of the Opposition's wife being foreign-born without naming her. While I can give you more than 90 reasons why the member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador's allegations is absolutely absurd, I shall confine my response to the fact that I am married to a beautiful and wonderfully made Baintown woman for the past 38 years, he said. And I want to emphasize to the member for Cat Island, Rumpke, and San Salvador that my wife is an indigenous Bahamian woman and that I have had over 38 years no reason for divorce. Continuing this editorial, which I read extenso. Moultrie's tone was petty and immature. That he sat and considered these words, prepared them, and read them, demonstrate he's not fit for the position of speaker. It is disgraceful that a speaker would read from the chair a 40-minute statement filled with bitterness, homophobia, and xenophobia. And the suspensions of Davis, Cooper, and Forbes were not justified. They were an abuse of power. Moultrie and Miriam Emanuel, the Free National Movement MP for Michael, embarrassed their party on February 7th. As she praised him for naming and suspending Hannah Martin, Emanuel said her father taught his daughters that if they approached their husbands disrespectfully, they would get manhandled, and suggested there may be some circumstances when it is acceptable for a man to beat his wife. You know, if I might pause there, or move away from the quotation, what I commend Emanuel for is recognizing abuse when she sees it. She recognized that the chair was abusing a woman. She recognized that, but she tried to justify the abuse. She saw what we saw. We saw our member being abused by the speaker. Go back to the quotation. After being criticized for the remarks, Emanuel apologized that evening. Moultrie and Emanuel gave the opposition ammunition. This was unfortunate. The PLP is a party on life support after the last election. The FNM, I thought what he said, yeah. The FNM caucus seems to support the Speaker in the House. The FNM caucus seems to support the Speaker in the House. That's a disgrace. Whether or not it was right to suspend Hannah Martin is a separate issue. She has been an obstructionist throughout this Parliament. Sensible FNM should not support what Moultrie did, however. We don't know how this matter will be resolved, but we certainly have no confidence in Moultrie to continue as Speaker. He cannot separate his emotions from decision-making. The chair should be occupied by someone who can. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Halson Moultrie, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Halson Moultrie, the member for Nassau Village, has brought the office of Speaker in odium, disrepute, and contempt. And public contempt. If you want any evidence of it, I start off by showing you sideburns. This is what he brought the Speaker's office to. Just do what is right. It is. I'll say more. I didn't put this out here. This is the public. This is what they're thinking. And if you want more, yeah, I like to lay this on the tape. Yes, this is what he's bringing.
You're laying it.
Yes, I'm going to lay it.
Order that the documents be brought up.
That's what he's brought our house to. And if you want...
One second, Kevin.
Yeah.
Order that the document do lie on the table.
That's what he's brought this house to. And you want further, let's check this picture of disgrace. This is the Respondent's Guardian. I'm just saying, this supports my contention that the member has brought the office in disrepute and public contempt.
Are you going to lay that too, Kevin?
I lay this too.
Order that document be brought up.
And Mr. Speaker, the numerous letters that's been written.
One second, member.
Mr. Speaker, and the numerous
Order that the document do lie on the table.
The numerous letters to the press, numerous commentary in the public domain, right, from all sides of the divide. See, if it was coming from PLP, you say, well, that's PLP inspired. But all sides of the divide, have come up with the unanimous view, and only that Mr. Moultrie has brought the office of the Speaker in odium and contempt, and as such, he should not continue in the post of Speaker. Mr. Chairman, the 4 members of Parliament for the Opposition Progressive Liberal Party will speak to affirm this motion. And the motion reads, if I may, Speaker.
Was it last week's when it last Monday's statement?
I had it here. Speaker, the motion reads, resolved that this House has no confidence in Halson Moultrie as Chair Speaker of this Honorable House because he is inadequate in many respects, which I laid out, has failed to carry out his obligation as Chair, which I laid out, finding out the breaches of rules that he's engaged in, and he's made decisions detrimental to parliamentary democracy, which again we have laid out. I think the case has been made. It's just whether we will be restrained by the straitjacket of party politics and allow maths to trump what is right in all these circumstances, Mr. Speaker.
As many. Do we have a seconder? Chair recognizes the member for Angliston.
Well done. Thank you. You let me know when you start the clocking. Okay.
Chair recognizes the member for Angliston.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I rise on behalf, Mr. Chairman, I rise on behalf of the good people of Angliston who have sent me to this place, thank you, to be their voice now in my 4th consecutive term. I do so having been most recently excluded from this honorable Parliament. And I rise to second this motion expressing no confidence in the Speaker of this honorable House. Mr. Chairman, it is for me most regretful that we in the opposition have been compelled to move such a motion. We supported the Speaker's appointment when this House first met 9 months ago. Angliston was hopeful that the Speaker, the member for Nassau Village, Mr. Halson Moultrie, would fare well despite the complexities and heavy dynamics of these proceedings. And despite his being a first-time member of this House, I hoped that he would appreciate that there would be some learning curve involved in his acculturation to this post. And I have had the privilege, Mr. Speaker, to serve with 3 other speakers before now. But the actions and words of the Speaker delivered last week in this honorable House, his demeanor and attitude are without precedent in my experience. They were in contravention to the rules of this House and a violation of the honored conventions which have governed this Parliament for generations. His conduct has shocked the nation, led to public outcry and widespread commentary, and embarrassed our honorable House. But what has been equally or perhaps more shocking is the endorsement, the commendation, the laughter, the banging on the tables and gleeful support by members who sat in this House in apparent appreciation of this gross departure from the standards of this honorable House. a matter to the beginning of love. This was to be the first of many biblical admonitions piously enunciated by members in this House to support what, by most accounts, was a gross departure from decorum by the Speaker and, by extension, this House. This unfortunate spectacle found its genesis in a debate some 3 weeks ago when I sought to bring attention to the plight of two women who were fired as airport managers on the island of Eleuthera. It is my firm view that these women, Danielle Gibson and Holly Pierce Barrett, were fired because of their political affiliation. They were both high-performing officers in the employ of the Airport Authority, yielding very positive returns on their efforts, and by all accounts, bringing strong leadership and deemed to be valued employees. Despite the minister with responsibility for airports, the member for Freetown, being present in the chamber during my contribution, who did not take exception to my assertions, it was the member for Elizabeth, the Minister of Health, who, as the whole country knows, has more than enough issues on his hands with the failing state of health care in our country. He took to his feet to require me to withdraw my comments, which I refused to do. The Speaker challenged me to withdraw the remarks if I could not prove them. I averred that I would not withdraw the comments because I know the reason they were terminated and that it was based on the politics in those communities. I remained firm, Mr. Chairman, that I would not withdraw, but the Speaker was free to expunge my words if he chose to do so. And as he had previously intimated he would. Carmichael then stood to accuse me of engaging in what he called an obscene demonstration and sought to have the entire debate of Angliston struck from the record because he said it was not relevant. In my view, a ludicrous position, but the Speaker seemed to entertain it and advised that he would rule after the luncheon break. Interestingly enough, and as my mother always told me, my late wonderful mother, time is longer than rope. Just a few days ago, a story appeared in the Tribune on the termination of these two women. And I have it handy. Sorry. And it was an interview with the Minister of Tourism and Aviation. He had and it says, Tourism and Aviation Minister, and I will lay this. Dionisio Diaghilev has suggested the political leanings of the two Progressive Liberal Party supporters may have played some part in their firing from airports in Eleuthera. He told the Tribune the two women did not have excellent job performance. It's not true, but this is what he said. And unwisely and overtly showed that they were supporters of the opposition party and while working for the government. However, he rebuffed assertions that they were being victimized. Mr. Diaghilev, when contacted Monday, insisted the women were not fired at his direction, but instead said the board of the Airport Authority determined they were not suited for their roles. Emphasizing he does not get involved in the minutiae of personnel decisions, he referred the Tribune to James Pinder, the chairman of the Airport Authority, for answers. But Mr. Pinder expressed surprise yesterday that he did this, saying, I have absolutely nothing to say about that issue. I have no idea, Speaker. But this is
you said you're going to...
I will may I lay everything at the end, Speaker.
I'd rather you do it now, unless you're going to refer back to it.
It takes the time away from my presentation. I will lay it there, Mr. Speaker. That's the norm, that to lay it at the end when you complete a presentation. This government, which controls this House, would wish to muzzle Angliston, expunge the debate of Angliston, stifles free speech of Angliston in this House, prevent Angliston from raising the plight of ordinary Bahamians. But that will not happen, Mr. Chairman. That will not happen, Mr. Chairman. This government, which controls this House, Speaker, now after the luncheon break, going back now to the request to expunge my presentation, during the same session, the Speaker apparently conceding that he could not strike my debate from the record, but in keeping with the apparent objective of applying pressure to me instead, asserted, and I quote, no statement from any member should ever come or be directed to the chair that, quote, doesn't matter or I don't care what the chair rules, you could do whatever you want to do. He then said he can pull the Hansard. I insisted to the Speaker that my words were not importing the meaning that he was attaching to them. The session then ended without further incident, and Parliament adjourned to the following week to debate new legislation. On the adjourned date, Mr. Chairman, this member met with the Speaker in chambers to advise that I intended to seek clarification on the matter of my words uttered in the previous sitting, as I had since obtained the Hansard. My concern was that the record would reflect the Speaker's claim that I uttered words which could be deemed disrespectful to the Chair. The Hansard did not support the Speaker's assertions of my words. The Speaker in chambers, however, clearly anticipated that I would be pursuing the point, having been advised, as I'm told it is the practice, that I had requested the Hansard to this end. He facilitated my intervention in the House, but then engaged in what this member described as an ambush. The Speaker seemed to abandon any discussion about the Hansard and moved on to what he said were Broadcasting Corporation videotapes of the proceedings in question, which he said showed that the member for Engliston consistently breached the rules with respect to listening to the Chair in silence. So we've moved now from the point at hand, which is whether I said I don't care what the Speaker do. We now move to the tapes and him saying that I was not listening quietly I was not listening to the Chair in silence. The Speaker then went further. He referred to a number of documents which he was holding at the time, claiming to be, in his words, a person scientifically trained and also trained in observational analysis, which he said established, and I quote, a pattern where the member for Engliston continuously, this is what he said about me, I continuously rise on points of order, make allegations and assertions that a member has made a statement, continuously he said, and on each and every occasion that I have been able to examine to this point, the member, in fact, based on the Hansard record, did not make the statement. This member, Mr. Chairman, was shocked by this gross accusation by the Speaker, which sought to erroneously depict Engliston as a member who frequently maligned other members without foundation. So we had gone from clarifying the record on my words to an all-out, full-frontal assault on my membership in this House. The member for Engliston was not permitted to respond to this unilateral indictment by the Speaker, who advised that this member would not even be able to respond once he had completed his statement. In the face of these baseless accusations, and in the interest of my personal dignity, and being confronted with my privilege being breached by none other than the Speaker, I've never seen that. Himself, without even the right to respond or defend myself against his allegations, without even having been given the fairness of having sight of any of the documentation he claimed to rely on, and with no one left to appeal to in this House, this member gathered her belongings and left the chamber, Mr. Chairman. It was at that time the Speaker purported to name the member for Engliston and invited, quote, all sympathizers who want to support can behave accordingly. A decision on the period of suspension will be determined and this Parliament will be informed. The Hansard will show, Mr. Chairman, however, that long before this moment, the Speaker had invited myself and the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador to withdraw from the Parliament, if, in his words, we do not want to abide by the rules. I have since had sight of the documents the Speaker relied upon, which he apparently later laid, and I invite the public to review them. And they're here, the newspaper articles and Hansard requested by Carmichael, not me. He said me requesting, one was by Carmichael. When you have a look at it, you'll see it was one of the requests you made. I don't know why it was in there. And it's clear. See, it's just a bunch of paper. These documents do not support nor establish the harmful claims by the Speaker about my character or my conduct in this Parliament. And it may well be argued that the Speaker misled this Parliament. This member now concludes that the actions of the Speaker were part of a larger collective undertaking by this government to seek to mute the voice of Engliston in this House. The procedure undertaken by the Speaker to name this member on the 31st of January was not in accordance with the rules of procedure of this House, and the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador has gone into that at length. And it was on the 7th of February that the Speaker sought to regularize the process by retroactively naming this member, while at the same time denying me access to the Parliament. It was on that date, on a motion to name the member of the House of Assembly, that the House of Assembly came to its lowest point in our parliamentary history, as far as I'm concerned. I've never even heard a story about other than what I saw last week in this parliament. The Speaker found that this member, the member for Engliston, was in breach not of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. He found that I was in breach of all 5 offenses, every single offense under Rule 88, not related to the circumstances of the following week. He went back to the day he first sat in the chair to talk about me, and used that as the basis, purportedly, on the later occasion, to pursue a motion. And, Mr. Speaker, I was going to go into the role of the Speaker, but the member for Cat Island has done that appropriately. One of the chief features, however, is that he must be impartial. There's a reason he does not engage in debate. There's a reason for that. On the 7th of February, however, the Speaker descended from his lofty chair of impartiality and decorum and launched attacks of the most personal and demeaning nature on members and on persons outside this House. Language which might be described as hate speech, directed at the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, and his wife, and on the member for Engliston, and on the former clerk of the House, and on the chairman of the Progressive Labour Party. And we have the examples here. I mean, if we want to elucidate it, we can, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, if you look at page 5 of the Hansard, because he had a speech, but he sort of ad-libbed. Page 5 of the Hansard, he says, you see, Mr. Retired Clerk, newness is what the doctor ordered. Listen to this language. To clean up the pus and oozing wounds brought about by contaminated and corrupt thinking in this parliament. Okay. This is what the Speaker said. And then he's speaking about the character of a very senior public servant who served for almost 40 years under 4 prime ministers, including Lyndon Pindley, and who has served with honor. And this is what we heard in here. And then again on page 15 of the Hansard, he speaks to page 15, where he speaks to the member for Engliston, where he says, I seem to think I'm entitled. Personal attack. Nasty. And then again on page 16, he speaks again about me thinking I'm entitled. And then he says on page 10, where he speaks, you have the Hansard there on that. Cat Island, page 10 in the Hansard. I'll come back to, you have it here? Page 3, yeah. And on page 10 he says, thank you. He says, while I can give you, I'm trying to find it. I have it marked out in the copy that I had. Anyway, it's where he speaks to, hold on. Anyway, Speaker, the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador has gone to the language, page 10. Well, I can give you more than 90 reasons, same quote. And he speaks about having married a wife, an indigenous Bahamian woman, and that I've had over 38 years, no reason for a divorce. Mashed plenty corn in here on that day, I tell you, Speaker. And then on page 11 of the Hansard, where he speaks to notwithstanding the member has allowed, in my estimation, reprobates and perverts with track records of denying and hating women to insert such a ludicrous, and he goes on and on and on, Mr. Speaker. And then again he speaks on page 12. His language, his closing language is very, very interesting and very disturbing and almost apocalyptic, Mr. Speaker. I was very concerned for the Speaker when I heard the things he was saying, and I was wondering whether the state of his mind, you have the final page there, the state of his mind Page 12, the final page. The speaker. And sorry. And thank you. This is the language he uses, Mr. Speaker. He speaks about, he says, in conclusion, let me assure all members that it is not a personal matter for me. I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is after all those assaults. And as a believer and ordained minister, I am guided by Ephesians 6 and 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rules of darkness of the world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And then he says this, the decorum, dignity, and fidelity of this parliament will be maintained. All principalities, darkness, and wickedness will be withdrawn, expunged, suspended, and driven out by expulsion, and members, I would advise you to govern yourselves accordingly. This is very peculiar language, and it makes me wonder very deeply about the mind of the member, the speaker. Mr. Speaker, but it was the support cast in this House which provided the most disturbing spectacle in the proceedings of this honorable House. It has given credence to my suspicion that this government seeks to silence the voice of opposition in this Commonwealth. 13 government members, most of them cabinet ministers, most of them first-time members in this House, couple months they've been in here, contributed in this infamous debate to suspend a member. I believe the length and extent of such a debate is unprecedented. This is also a condemnation of the Speaker to allow this to take place in this Parliament. And I was surprised to see the member for Bamboo Town to be the first to jump to his feet, to praise the Speaker in light of his derogatory innuendo towards those who do not have, in the Speaker's words, indigenous Bahamian wives, which would have included Bamboo Town. But he seemed to have overlooked the insult to both him and his own wife, and instead lavished commendation and holy praise on the Speaker with biblical support. Bamboo Town claimed that the Bahamian people wanted Anguston out of Parliament for even more days. And he said to the Speaker, I want to end there by commending you, because I believe the Bahamian people who have observed the entire record of what has taken place this morning would know that we, in keeping with both the rules of this House, would have done that which is good. That is how the member for Bamboo Town described the behavior of the Speaker. The member for Elizabeth, the Minister of Health, who has so much work to do in his portfolio, sought to give a lecture about the dignity, grace, and honor of a member. But will he recall the courtesy extended to him as a new member when he made representations to this House that were not accurate, and for which he could have been accused of misleading? Remember? It was the member for Anguston whom he sought to castigate in his contribution, and who helped him to correct the misrepresentation, then seeking to destroy and damage the reputation of other individuals. And then there was the member for Tall Pines, who's the chairman. And you're sitting there, and I got to be careful, Mr. Chairman. But on the record, the member on the record sought to put, well, there's Tall Pines, not the chairman. Tall Pines said, we have one of, well, he boasted, we have one of the longest standing democracies in this hemisphere, one of the longest and one of the most respected, and we're not going to allow any member, I don't care how long she's been in this House, I don't care who she represents, because this is the people's House, etc., etc. And then what I found, what he did, Mr. Speaker, he sought to put on the record of Parliament, which he said were private exchanges that he claimed to overhear between two members seated on the record of the House. Yeah. This is unprecedented. In all my many years in this House, and coming from the Deputy Speaker. First we have the Speaker, and now this. Lord, help us. Help us, Lord. And Mr. Speaker, and I just want, and remember, for Tall Pines should know, I sit in strategically too, and I hear plenty of things too. I mean, I could put it on the record also. I've heard the exchanges with colleagues behind me. You don't do that, Speaker. And then, of course, you know, the member likened me to a character in Dallas, but I'm not going to dwell on that because my time is running out. But I had a response for that, but it's frivolous and I can keep moving. And then we had the melodious eloquence of the member for South Beach, the esteemed Minister of Education, who was equally or perhaps more effusive in his praise of the Speaker's behavior than any other member in this House. South Beach, in his signature Shakespearean-like prose, tells us of the speaker being seized with a, quote, sense of humility and respect. He congratulated and endorsed his words, the speaker's words, and expressed, quote, how grateful I am to you, sir, for assisting in extinguishing the galloping culture of slackness that we find in our Bahamian society, one that seems to be seized with this mindset poisonous, in which our people seem to think they can do as they please. He spoke of being, quote, so proud of the speaker today. And so, sir, this nation honors you for assisting in a manner which is before the entire country by way of the visual media, which is television, known as television, in beginning to assist us, especially in the Ministry of Education, to advise our young people, those beginning at approximately 3 years. He set this up, the example for 3-year-olds, said to about 17 that there is a responsibility to obey the rules and regulations. And so in a most paradoxical and puzzling presentation, the Minister of Education held up the display that shocked a nation for its vitriol and bigotry as the shining example for our nation's children. Fort Charlotte, and he ain't here. Oh, and on the other hand, suggested my integrity in this house was in question. And you know, Fort Charlotte said, if you leave it to him, he'd keep me out for 5 years. So, you know, this is interesting. Now, Mr. Speaker, being one of the few female members of this House, I was gravely disappointed. However, and in fact, grossly shocked with the involvement of women in this Parliament. I'm going to read quickly because my time is running out, and I will get to Kalani. They all seem to have a recurring theme, which sought to foist upon this member, and as an equal member of this House, a relationship with the Speaker, according to them, analogous to a father and a child, a husband and a submissive wife, and even a grandfather I heard somewhere down the road there. And very disturbingly, at least 2 members, female members, Foxell and Michael, alluded to violent chastisement within the course of their presentation to create analogies of how this member should be dealt with by the Speaker. Michael, and I don't want to go through it, you saw what she said about bust down and punch in your mouth and manhandled and, you know, so we've been over that, but Foxell speaks about an occasion when she did not show respect for an elder. She said, I did not know where the belt came from. I just remember when it hit me. And Mr. Speaker, that perhaps began my athletic career because I ran. But that's how villagers deal with no manners. And they often told us, if we don't listen, you will certainly feel. I saw on Freeport the other day for the rights of women in this country. The Speaker, Italia Johnson, who acquitted herself with dignity and acumen as the only woman yet to serve. And then, you know, there's an article by Gaynell Curry, who used to serve in the Ministry of Social Service, and we got to find out why she's not there anymore. But she has an article on why these women are speaking this way about other women. What is the psychology happening there? And Mr. Speaker, the member for Kalani, you know, he spoke about the proceedings of this House being televised throughout the Bahamas. And then he said, in fact, throughout the world. And then this is his words, our young kids are watching, parents are watching, men, women, and they are watching our behavior. They are watching our activities, how we respond. They are watching our mannerisms and how we respect each other. And it saddens me as Prime Minister to have a member, the behavior displayed by the member of Engliston is totally dishonorable. If this disrespect continues throughout and affects our law enforcement agencies, then there's complete disruption by a society, no respect for the law. We become a lawless society. I only want to say, Mr. Chairman, if one wishes to see a display of dishonorable behavior, Google on YouTube the naming and suspension of Kalani in 2013, when he was leader of the opposition, at which time Kalani accused a fellow member in this House, no less than a serving Prime Minister, and could not of corruption, and could not provide one shred of evidence to support it when challenged. The then Speaker asked Kalani to withdraw it 14 times, he said. Withdraw it 14 times. The Speaker asked him to withdraw it, and he refused. He was named by the Speaker and asked by the Speaker to leave the chamber. But the member for Kalani refused to leave the chamber. His conduct necessitated the involvement of many police officers to effect his removal. He created disruption and brandished placards in this honorable House. It was the intervention of the then member for Long Island which diffused the escalating situation, and he eventually left the House. East Bahama, you were right there resisting the police. The member for Kalani is not qualified to call anyone dishonorable. In hearing his words about respect for the police, one would have to do a double take. And indeed, I'm reminded of his words outside the courtroom on the occasion of the Cabbage Beach vendors' arraignment in magistrate courts, where he said the following of the actions of a police officer. Why have they not been brought any charges against the police who was kicking at one of the defendants while on the ground? This is overt police brutality. So they're not bringing charges against that particular inspector because he's PLP, and he goes on and on and on. And this is a matter before the court. And the Prime Minister today, who was then the leader of opposition, speaking about what was sorry? And when we think of dishonorable, we wonder what those vendors are saying, but were promised by Kalani that their convictions would be expunged. And so, Mr. Speaker, as I am compelled to wind down, what the country saw and what Engliston was subject to can only be likened to a kangaroo court, during the course of which the entire opposition was suspended from the House. This disclosed systemic failure. Members' characters were maligned, and demonstrating that for purely political expediency, the honorable members of this House would commend, recommend, praise, and hail conduct that shocked and dismayed a country. And the Speaker sat high and presided over the dismal spectacle, Mr. Speaker. All 13 members, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, it is in there. So, Mr. Speaker, I am asking that the speeches of, and I actually want to say that I've been in a parliament before with a Prime Minister who takes control of these situations. That there was no leadership in this parliament, none, that could have rescued a situation. So, Mr. Speaker, the speeches of all 13 members should be expunged from the record. It is in their interest that this is done. For while they sought to condemn this member, they condemned only themselves. Michael must apologize to this member and to this House for her very unwise comments and unkind analogies. The Speaker has shown, even in the aftermath of it all, that he is unsuited for this role, and he should do the honorable thing and step down. His perverse words and rulings now serve as precedent. This is the important thing. They serve as precedent in this Parliament, in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and that cannot be permitted. That has to be addressed by this Parliament. The record must be rectified. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Engliston. As many. Chair recognizes the member for Bamboo Town.
I move for a 5-minute suspension.
It's been moved and seconded that the House suspend for 5 minutes. As many that are in favor would remain seated. Those opposing would rise. You can't rise on a suspension. The House is hereby suspend 5 minutes.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Before we proceed, the member for Engliston, I think you were at the table. Order that the documents do be brought up.
Thank you.
Order that the documents do lie on the table. As many. The chair recognizes the member for Bamboo Town. The chair recognizes the member for Bamboo Town.
Yes, Mr. Deputy, but I had the floor.
The chair recognizes, the chair will recognize the member for Bamboo Town. Can you please?
Mr. Speaker.
Be suspended.
The member was on the floor when
When two or more members rise, the speaker or the chair may call upon the member who, in his opinion, first rose in his place.
he rose.
As the chair, the member recognizes the member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Chair.
Please, Pine Ridge, please.
Mr. Chair.
The chair will recognize all members if and when the appropriate time comes. The chair now recognizes the member for Bamboo Town. Please be seated, Pine Ridge. Thank you. The chair recognizes Bamboo Town.
Lord of life, King of creation, from eternity to eternity, you alone are God, and you are good. You do all things well, and I thank you. I hadn't intended to start with all of that, but I thought it was instructive so I can center myself. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Chair, I rise on behalf of the good people of Bamboo Town who saw fit to send me to this place for a second time. I came in under one banner, and they sent me in here under another. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg leave to move the following amendment to the resolution. After the first words, whereas, delete all the words that follow, and I want you to substitute the following. The Member of Parliament for Nassau Village, the Honorable Halson Moultrie, has since his election as the 54th Speaker of this Honorable House on the 24th of May 2017, restored the honor, dignity, and respect due to the high office of Speaker of this Honorable House. And whereas the Honorable Mr. Speaker, in the conduct of the business of this Honorable House over the past 8.5 months, has consistently displayed fairness, judicious deliberation, even-handedness, and a firm determination to uphold the high standards of conduct and decorum on the part of each honorable member of this House without regard as to which side of the House the member supports. And whereas in the determination of every dispute referred to him for the decision, he has interpreted the rules of the House generously and in a manner consistent with the historic rights and privileges of members of the House, having due regard to the rights of the minority party to the principles of natural justice and democratic values. And whereas on the 31st of January 2013, the Honorable Speaker responded 2018, the Honorable Speaker responded to the repeated disruption and disrespect to the chair displayed by the Honorable Member of Parliament for Engliston by naming the said member. And at a subsequent meeting on the 7th of February 2018, the Honorable Speaker, faced with the apparent persistent disrespect for the chair by the Honorable Members of Parliament for Cat Island, Rumkey and Sansal, Exuma and Ragged Island, Central and South Andros, who refused to take their seats and remain standing in open defiance by suspending the said members for 2 sittings of the Honorable House. And whereas the complaints of the Honorable Member of Parliament for Engliston could well have been made at an appropriate time and in a manner in which, while disagreeing with the Speaker, nonetheless could have shown respect for the chair and the high office of Speaker, and at the latter meeting, the Honorable Member of Parliament for Cat Island, Rumkey and Sansal, Exuma and Ragged Island, and Central and South Andros could similarly have registered their disapproval of the Speaker's order after having taken their respective seats and rising at appropriate time to express any reservations or concerns in a respectful manner to be expected of members of this honorable House. And whereas the consistent disrespect shown to the chair and to the honorable speaker in this place, coupled with the personal attack and aspersions cast in a press release outside of this place, provoked a response by the speaker. And whereas the ruling of the honorable speaker to maintain order and respect for the chair and due order in parliamentary debates and exchanges of views is directly supported by the weighty precedents and authority recited in Erskine May's parliamentary procedures. And recalling that members of the opposite side displayed flagrant disregard for the rules of the House and the ruling made by the honorable speaker in an unparliamentary display of arguing and constantly interrupting the speaker on the one hand and standing in open defiance of the speaker's ruling on the other hand, contrary to the rules of the House and established parliamentary practice, and thereby sought to disrupt the House when they could not dissuade, to distract when they could not dictate, and to distort the record of the proceedings of the House when they could not defend their own record. Now be it therefore resolved that this House has confidence in the Speaker, the Honorable Halson Moultrie, and that he, after this debate, be invited to resume his chair. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Chair, it is momentous and noteworthy that on this day, there are two things I want us to recognize. Firstly, today is Ash Wednesday, which signals the beginning of the 40-day period of the Church's sacred calendar, where we recognize God, the ultimate authority who exists in unlimited time and unlimited space. He says, from eternity to eternity, I am God. God entered our four-dimensional world of limited time and limited space to reassert his authority. We acknowledge that in this place. Every time we meet, we pray the Lord's Prayer saying, your will be done in earth, limited time and space, as it is done in heaven. Limitless time and limitless space. Second, Mr. Deputy Chair, Mr. Deputy Speaker, today is Valentine's Day, and we recognize that most powerful of entities, love. Love that drives our positive energies and emotions. And Mr. Chair, Mr. Deputy, I believe all of us are driven by that one entity in what we do in this place. I believe, Mr. Chair, that all of us here in politics have an abiding love for the Bahamian people and their well-being. Mr. Chair, I firmly believe that. So, Mr. Chair, understanding all of this, Christ's assertion of his authority and love in this world, in regards to this motion and coming vote, I want to ask three questions. The first, how did we get here? What is the results of us being here? And more importantly, how do we get from here? Mr. Deputy Chair, Mr. Chair, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would say it started with a flippant and flagrant disregard and disrespect for the established authority in this honorable House. I would say that. The side opposite would say, we got here by an act of civil disobedience, not a trip to the bathroom. In fact, according to the chairman of the side opposite, the chairman of the PLP. The act of civil disobedience in this parliament was planned. It was planned and orchestrated with the intent of getting the government to overreact, thereby giving the opposition a cause to grandstand and to derail the people's agenda. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Chair, I want to quote from their chairman in this one instance. We can take their chairman's advice. You know, last night he gave some other advice. We ain't gonna take that in one press release. But we can take this advice. So I want to quote from the opposition's chairman. What happened this morning was a classic case. House of Assembly, I want to start over because I want you to hear me, and I want the Bahamian people to hear me. I want you to listen to the quote that I've adopted that came from their chairman. What has happened this morning was a classic case of civil disobedience at its best, because the authority of the country has been provoked to do something stupid. ... But I say it is a classic civil rights experience, civil disobedience experience. And you will know that in the days of Martin Luther King Jr. and in the days of Mahatma Gandhi, the whole point of civil disobedience is to use non-violent methods to provoke the authority to do something which is extreme, to overplay their hand, and thus prick the moral conscience of the nation at large. And so this minority PLP that they so despise was able to knock them completely off their track today. Their legislative agenda is now knocked off track, and they are spending time on something which they could have dealt with easily. Simply move on. But instead, filled with their hubris, they are now delaying the country's business because they want to express vengeance. And again, since they know the Bible so well, they should know that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. That's the quote from the side opposite. So the question, how do we get here? The answer is an act of civil disobedience. What is the result of us being here? The legislative agenda of the government is stopped and derailed, and we are not doing the country's business according to the chairman of the side opposite. Oh, by the way, you know, the side opposite say we ain't got no agenda or no plan. But the chairman disagreed with that. He say, we off our agenda and we off our plan. They say it's derailed. But I think, based on the communication by the Honorable Prime Minister this morning, I think you should know that the government has been at work in our plan. Ain't nobody going to derail that. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Chair, last question is, how do we get from here? Their Honorable Chairman gave us the answer too. He says, oh, it is easy. All we got to do is move on. And vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So we have in the actions of the members of the opposition an act of civil disobedience, which challenges, they would say, provoke the authority, the Speaker, who reacts. They would say he overreacted.
The result is, according to them, the people's business isn't being done. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Chair, they say it's easily fixed, and today we're going to fix that. Mr. Deputy Chair, given all that has been said so far, why should we endure this one more day? One more house sitting, spinning around on this hamster wheel. You know, my Christian grandma would say, the devil is a liar, and the truth is not in him. Mr. Chair, we will not endure this one more day. We on this side will address this issue with a vote of confidence in the Speaker. We are going to move on. We are going to end this sad saga today. We are going to go back to the people's business in the people's house. Mr. Chair, we are going to take the advice from the chairman of the side opposite. He says it is easy, just move on and leave vengeance to the Lord. House of Assembly, I want you to go with me. I want you to say it with me. What did he say? It is easy. Just move on. Vengeance is, say it.
Can you speak to the chair, please?
With that, Mr. Deputy Chair, I will say, as the lawyers say in court, I rest my case.
As many as there, seconder, the chair recognizes the member for Pinewood.
Very good. Mr. Deputy. I rise by the grace of God for the good of Pinewood and our Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Deputy, I am on my feet to second and support this motion for the greater good and the expediency of the Bahamian people, for truth and democracy. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am fortunate to speak early on this matter and to set the tone for and on behalf of the supreme boss of this House, the Bahamian people. Not self, not party. Mr. Deputy, notwithstanding and acknowledging the hand of God, it is the Bahamian people, our bosses, that place us in this place and not we ourselves. We are here to do their good work, and we all serve at the pleasure of the Bahamian people in this place. Mr. Deputy, I've seen caricatures presented in this place of cartoons as public opinion. But the Bahamian people, our bosses, are not pleased nor fooled and will not allow this to stand any longer. And I must say to all of us, we all will be judged on a scheduled day by the Bahamian people on the words, our words, and our deeds in this place. Mr. Deputy, our boss is saying to us all, get back to work and waste not another day to the disadvantage of our Commonwealth. Our bosses have reviewed our files and have concluded that the matters leading up to this debate falls far short of the prime directive, which is selfless service in the public interest. It falls far short of that, Mr. Deputy. Yes. Our bosses, the Bahamian people, in encouraging us, reminds us all of the maxim of equity. Those who come to equity must come with clean hands. Those who seek equity must be equitable. I've heard words here this morning, words such as compounded wrong. So let me define what was just said about equity. As an example, could you imagine, Mr. Deputy, two individuals, genders not required, decide to rob a drug dealer? They did that successfully, and on their way home, one of the two decided to rob the other one of their share. Then the other one goes to court and filed a complaint that he was robbed by his cohort. The court will look at that and say, before you come before me, come with clean hands. Right. It's the law of equity, sir. Our bosses, the Bahamian people, believes, and history have shown, that if any disputed party in this place, any member, even guilty of words like the unpardonable act, if any of them crosses the floor, they would be welcomed, they'll be forgiven, they'll be supported. This shows that we can all be divinely forgiving in our political interest. Therefore, the Bahamian people insist that we all be divinely forgiving in the public interest. If a matter hinders the prime directive, there is no excuse for the language I've been hearing around here. Because it's the same persons that they speak venom of, where they say, I'll join your side, they will find every reason to say how great they are. Let's be fair and truthful. Pinewood has said before that character counts. And now adds that not only does character count, it is more important than brownie pounds. And we should get beyond that, sir. Finally, if a system fails at its own hands, it should be judged alone. But if other hands and factors are at play, then all hands must be judged. And if all hands must be partakers in a judgment, wisdom says, as to the judgment seat, don't go there. Mr. Deputy, as lawmakers, we all must show respect for the very law and order we prescribe to others. Always remembering that we are of the people, and I pray every day for the people. We're not better than the people. Mr. Deputy, Pinewood hopes that we can surprise our Bahamian people with a gift of exceptional, selfless leadership today. Let us on this Ash Wednesday restore a working House of Assembly. Pinewood is not encouraging anyone to join its view or its vote for the Speaker. However, Pinewood is discouraging unnecessary degradation of the people's business and waste of their productive time in this place anymore. No. Let's show our bosses, the Bahamian people, better than we can tell them. Show self-respect and that of others. Fight battles you could win, and above all, work for the public good. Pinewood will not waste the productive time of the Bahamian people with a long discourse, and encourage the same from as many on this matter. We must get to the matter ASAP that are transformational and transformative to the lifestyle, and livelihood of my Bahamian people. None of us is above the Bahamian people. The good of the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is paramount. I support this motion, and I support having this House end with the good news that began this House, the work of the government for the lifestyle and the betterment of the Bahamian people. So Pine would rest on that matter and encourage all of us as we second this motion. And encourage all of us to move on, not in self-interest, but in the interest of the people. Pinewood seconds, sir, this motion.
Pinewood, for the record, Pinewood seconds the amended resolution. Pinewood seconds the amended.
Pinewood seconds the amended motion.
Obliged. As many.
As amended.
The chair recognizes the member for Pine Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. And thank you, colleagues, for permitting me this opportunity to speak, Mr. Deputy.
1 second.
An essay on criticism by Alexander Pope. I wish to extract from his writing, but before I conclude with his famous quote, let me first quantify his explanation. All people commit sin and make mistakes. God forgives them, and people are acting in a godlike divine way when they follow pursuit and forgive others. It is from this provocating rationale and thought that we have this famous quote by Alexander Pope: "To err is human, to forgive is divine." Mr. Deputy, once again I thank Almighty God for the privilege to pontificate, better yet, Mother, speak to, on behalf of the good and gracious people of Pine Ridge. Mr. Deputy, let me take this opportunity on a day where love is emphasized and proliferated nationally and globally to express a happy Valentine to the people of Pine Ridge and by extension the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Deputy, I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to wish my lovely wife Tracy Monique, the love of my life, a very happy Valentine. We're committed to each other, and after so many years, we love being in the presence of each other. Mr. Deputy, I'm a part of that statistic that helped to make up the relationship reality in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Fortunate or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, where the marriage rate is almost equal to the divorce rate. There are just as many people in this country that are divorced as also married. It's unfortunate. Sometimes people marry too early, feel pressured to do so, especially if you're in the church. Or perhaps after marriage they recognize that they're not compatible and they have less in common. They were simply in lust and not in love. And then you have a lot of people who are married by paper and ring, but behind closed doors they live divorced lives. Mr. Deputy, I said this to encourage those out there who are divorced and perhaps are considering remarriage to recognize that there is hope in finding the person that makes you happy. Mr. Deputy, despite me being a divorcee and remarried, Tracy Monique, whom I have a son with, makes me happy, and the evidence is seen in my demeanor and comfort in my daily life. Mr. Deputy, I represent the Pine Ridge constituency, a demographic grouping of our Bahamian society, the lower, middle, and upper middle class of our country. Therefore, knowing that they are not the upper echelons of our society, I avoid speaking to them by way of parable and diplomacy. My people whom I represent can be found in the cross-section of the majority of constituencies represented in this place. Mr. Deputy, I have a responsibility to speak to my constituents, not at them, not below them, not above them, but to them, so that by the time as I'm through speaking in and out of this place, there's no ambiguity or question about what I may or may not have said. Mr. Deputy, this has not been the best 2 weeks in and out of this place, and it is unpropitious that history will recall when it's said and done. This was not the best 2 weeks, and I'm referring to all of us. It's not been the best 2 weeks for the Speaker, the members of the governing party, and the opposition. People out there don't like what they've been seeing and hearing in here. Mr. Deputy, my profession and vocation was birthed from evangelism. An evangelist from the context of the church is often referred to as the messenger. Sir, I've always been operating in this place as the people's messenger, and I'm often ostracized for bringing the message because perhaps it's because of who the messenger is. It's high time that we stop trying to assassinate the messenger and start listening to the message from the people who sent us here in the first place. Mr. Deputy, we're here debating the occurrence of the last 2 weeks. But, sir, this really isn't about the last 2 weeks. This has more to do with the last 25 years. The Bahamian people have become fatigued and or tired of politicians and the way business have been conducted in and out of this place in the name of the people. When this high drama took place on the 7th of February 2018, I was not in the precinct. I did not attend, but I watched attentively, and I too, like many Bahamians, became frustrated by my observations. How can an establishment that is to be so nationally high bring us to an all-time low? How does a place with supposedly honorable men and women display such dishonorable conduct? Mr. Deputy, the message the people are conveying is that they've seen this movie before. The cast might presently be different, but the plot, scenery, and performance are very vivid and familiar. Mr. Deputy, the people asked me to share some of the scenes from the last performance by another cast. They reminded me of how my leader, who was once leader of the opposition, and how he had been named, and how members then sought to block the police from getting to him. They reminded me of another time when the entire opposition walked out of the House, and they were not suspended by the then Speaker, and one of his members stayed behind in the person of Edison Key. They reminded me of how my present leader, who was once leader of the opposition, was always being bombarded, berated, and then the government, and that then government, as he was leader, they would always ask this question, right from this place: who's the leader? The man or the woman? Does it sound familiar? They reminded me how the then government would stick their chests out, bang on the desk, laugh at the opposition, and would always remind them, we have the numbers. Mr. Deputy, the Bahamian people were watching this movie from 2012 to 2017. It's now 2018, and the script is familiar. This is why the people are saying, same movie, different cast. Mr. Deputy, all of us in this honorable place know how that movie ended. That in and of itself should cause us, this government, to write an entirely different script. Let me ask another question, just to add to this movie. What are they saying about the opposition now that they didn't say about us 4.5 years ago? Things that make you go, And who's the government? The people of the Bahamas wish for us to elevate our speech and behavior in this place. They want maturity and consciousness from their representatives. A message from the people of Pine Ridge, by extension Grand Bahama and the Bahamas. The people are mad with the present opposition. That's why they are presently in opposition. Mr. Deputy.
Mr. Deputy Chair, we are at the 1 o'clock hour, and I'd like to move a motion that we continue beyond 1 to give the member an opportunity to finish his contribution.
It's been moved and seconded that the business of this House continue beyond 1 o'clock. As many members are in favor, remain seated. Those opposing will rise. It's carried. The business of the House will carry on beyond 1 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Government Leader. Thank you, House members. And I think I need to repeat that. Mr. Deputy, the message from the people of Pine Ridge, by extension Grand Bahama, the Bahamas, the people are mad with the present opposition. That's why they are presently in opposition. Mr. Deputy, while they are mad with the present opposition, resulting in them being where they are, the people of the Bahamas, supporters included, of our government, are highly disappointed in our performance or the lack thereof. Mr. Deputy, the revelation about this whole situation is they are no longer, please do not take my words out of context. The revelation about this whole situation is they are no longer as mad with the opposition as they are highly disappointed in us as a government. So you know what I'm saying? They're mad with them, but they're not as mad. And they're still waiting on us. Mr. Deputy, before my colleagues chew me to pieces for giving the message that is being permeated out there, beating me up for the truth, privately and publicly, does not change the perception or reality of what I'm saying.
Member for Pine Ridge, speaking to the chair.
Yes, sir, that's why I'm addressing you.
Yes, to the chair.
You see, Mr. Deputy, I just have a habit. I'm a preacher. I got to look around.
Speak to the chair.
You see, Mr. Deputy, the former Prime Minister, Hubert A. Ingram, used to say from this place, make laws you can live with when you are no longer in this place. Mr. Deputy, for me, my Christianity does not stop at the bar when I bow to the chair. My Christianity is a lifestyle. When I am no longer in this place, I want to be able to preach in any island and in any pulpit in this country, if I'm so moved to do so. So I must maintain my credibility and spiritual integrity while in this place. Too many come to this place believing life begins and ends in this place, and probably for some it does. Well, let me remind you, if you don't believe me, just in case you may have forgotten, which I don't think you have, the Bahamian people put us in, and the Bahamian people are the ones who will take us out. Mr. Deputy, through you, sir, let me take a moment to encourage my colleague from MyCal and the fellow pulpitarian. The member made a comment that offended many in this country. Yet before the sun went down, the member took an introspective view of the statement and deemed it necessary to apologize to the Bahamian people. I can only pray that they would graciously forgive the member, as the member was gracious in admitting no ill was meant towards the women and the people of our society. The member was magnanimous for doing so and ought to be commended and not castigated for the regret. Mr. Deputy, the Speaker has the arduous task of maintaining law and order in this chamber. Every member in this place look to the Speaker for protection while in this place. Mr. Speaker is expected to be impartial despite his partisan politics. Like most of us, the Speaker is a product of on-the-job training. Notwithstanding, the Speaker is the highest authority in this august body. Therefore, he's held to a higher standard. This is why I couldn't be Speaker or Deputy. I'm too much of a fighter for that. I'd rather be in the fight for the people rather than parting the fight for the people. It is what it is. Mr. Deputy, in this place we all have responsibility to respect the chair. Moreover, when the chair feels disrespected, the chair must maintain a certain decorum. It's not always easy doing so, especially when you're dealing with different personalities, ideologies, and know-it-alls. Mr. Deputy, while the opposition is small in number, we must not give the appearance as if we are bullying them because of their size. Let me hasten to say I'm not saying that we are, but we do not want the perception being perceived. Mr. Deputy, the opposition also has a responsibility to respect the rules and the chair. They too, that is the opposition, must recognize the position they hold today is the result of their immediate past performance. They would not want their supporters and Joe Public to believe that they're steeped in arrogance. Therefore, they can come into this place and behave in a manner they choose to without submitting themselves to the rules of this House. Mr. Deputy, as I said earlier, this has not been the best 2 weeks for the House and its members. Those opposite have brought a vote of no confidence against the Speaker today. It is unfortunate. We all got some mud on us in this last 2 weeks, and I, of course, especially today. Yet 2 wrongs never make it right. There needs to be today a spirit of reconciliation and forgiveness for things said on both sides. This is what the Bahamas really wants to see today on this Love Day. Mr. Deputy, the Bahamian people did not send us here for this, or to act in a manner in which we have been acting. The public expects more from us and of us. They want more of the people's business done in this Parliament. Might I add, they want legislation coming out of this place that will improve their welfare, well-being, safety, environment, and regional jurisdiction. Mr. Deputy, through you, sir, members of the opposition, I understand what you're doing, and you have every parliamentary right to do so. I am sorry we had to come to this juncture. On behalf of the people of Pine Ridge, we are sorry for any ill will and offense you may have felt during these past 2 weeks, personal or otherwise. Pine Ridge also conveys the same sentiment to the Speaker of this honorable chamber, who may have felt provoked. Pine Ridge also sympathizes with persons who outside this place felt violated or attacked during these course of actions. Nevertheless, Pine Ridge feels that the end does not justify the means. We, Pine Ridge, are not prepared to advance the opposition motion vote of no confidence in the Speaker at this time. Pine Ridge would hope that this would be a learning experience where we all respect each other's office and the office we all hold. Mr. Deputy, may this place once again be a beacon of light for Bahamians everywhere to emulate. To err is human. To forgive is divine. May God bless this house and all that serve therein. God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Much obliged, Mr. Deputy.
As many. Chair recognizes the member for South Central Grand Andros. Chair recognizes the member for Belmont.
Mr. Chair, I do now move that the House suspends until 3 p.m. today.
We have a second. Second. It's moved and seconded that the House do suspend until 3 p.m. today. As many that are in favor will remain seated. Those opposing will rise. The House stands suspended until 3 p.m. today.
All right.